7 o'clock p.m., Monday, August 6, 2018. The regular meeting of the Waverly City Council will come to order. Roll call, please.
Bergen.
Present.
Drinkow.
Here.
Kangas.
Here.
McKenzie.
Here.
Rothy. Here. Sheriff.
Present.
Waldstein. Here.
Thank you. Now, if you would all join and rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move approval of the agenda.
Second.
All second?
Any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
No? Carried 7-0. Approval of the minutes from July 2nd, July 16th, regular meeting minutes, and July 23rd, 2018 study session minutes. I'd entertain a motion.
I move approval of the minutes. Both groups.
All second?
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion by the council? Hearing none. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Carried 7-0. Our guest council person for the month of August is to be Ann Segerman, but she is on vacation, so she will be here at the next meeting. The next item on the agenda is a proclamation declaring Tuesday, August 7th, 2018 as National Night Out with our police force. Proclamation goes as this. Whereas the National Association of Town Watch are sponsoring a unique nationwide crime, drug, and violence prevention program on August 7th, 2018 entitled National Night Out, and whereas the 35th Annual National Night Out provides a unique opportunity for the City of Waverly to join forces with thousands of other communities across the country in promoting cooperative police community crime prevention efforts. And whereas the citizens of Waverly play a vital role in assisting the Waverly Police Department to control crime, drug, and violence in the City of Waverly, and this partnership is an important goal of the National Night Out 2018. And whereas it is essential that all citizens of Waverly be aware of the importance of crime prevention programs and the impact that their participation can have on reducing crime, drug, and violence in the City of Waverly. And whereas police, community partnership, neighborhood safety awareness, and cooperation are important themes for the National Night Out program. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Dean Sois, do hereby call upon all citizens of Waverly to join the Waverly Police Department and the National Association of Town Watch in supporting the 35th Annual Night Out on August 7th, 2018. Further, let it be resolved that I, Mayor Dean Sois, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, August 7th, 2018 as National Night Out in the City of Waverly. Chief Purcell, do you have anything to add to that before we take a vote?
Thank you, Mayor. That was a good resolution. So it covered a lot of the bases of the importance of National Night Out. It is tomorrow night, Tuesday night, from 4:30 to 8:30 at Coleman Park. And it's just a great opportunity. Every one of our police officers with the City of Waverly will be out there, and they'll be in a relaxed environment that you'll be able to come up and visit with each and every one of us. So we encourage you to lock your door and turn your porch light on and come on out.
Very good. Thank you. Any discussion by the council? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
I know a year or so ago, blue light bulbs were passed out to the council as a way of turning on the front porch light and supporting the police department. So I guess I would encourage others in town, if they've got a blue light bulb, maybe put it out on the front porch and show their support that way also.
Okay. Entertain a motion.
I will move the proclamation as read by the mayor.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any council discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next on the agenda is public hearing. This is the date, time, and place for a public hearing on a new housing project for the Waverly Municipal Housing Commission pursuant to Iowa Code Section 403A.28. Do I have any written or oral comments, Carla?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, thank you. Open the public hearing. Anyone that wishes to speak to this item? Public hearing is closed, but I see the Director of Waverly Housing is here. Do you have some words that you'd like to impart to us before we vote, Rebecca? Okay. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but, so, to entertain a motion.
I'll move Resolution 18-119, a resolution to commence a municipal housing project for the 420 building project at 420 16th Street Northwest in Waverly.
Second.
Motion made and second. Council discussion. For those of you watching at home and also here in the audience, this is to support a new 15-unit, two-story building at the corner, basically at the corner of 15th Street Northwest and Wilson Avenue in that vicinity. And they have a list anticipated a list of people that would like to live there, and they're running out of room. So it's a good project for them to take on, so. Roll call vote,
Well,
please.
so
I'm
I
sorry.
had a couple questions. So is this primarily senior housing, or is this just low-income housing? That wasn't clear, or affordable housing, so, I mean,
It would be senior housing and disabled individuals
Yeah.
okay.
are eligible to live in those units.
Any other questions?
I hate to bring this up, but the number 420, to me, is a questionable use for, maybe I want to say low-income housing. I know that there's connotations between the number 420 and the marijuana culture, and I just worry when I see that number thrown on a building. I know that there's the 425th Street where a bunch of college students live, and they pride themselves on their house number. So anytime I see that number, it just kind of makes me nervous, so,
That's the last item on the agenda, no.
okay. But
We're going to go ahead and, I think
Okay.
they're probably going to rename it at some point. We just had to have a name for this resolution.
fantastic, fantastic.
Okay. Hearing no other questions, roll call vote, please.
Bergen.
Yes.
Excuse me. Drinkow.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Rafi.
Yes.
Scherer.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Motion carried. Next item on the agenda, if I can find my sheets here, is the third and final reading of Ordinance 1050, an ordinance providing for rezoning of property owned by the city located along 15th Street Northwest and 16th Street Northwest by 3rd Avenue Northwest from R3 multiple family residential 2 to 4 units to R4 multifamily residential apartments 5+ units. This is simply rezoning the piece of property so that they can build a 15-unit residential building on that site, or on that area.
But I think it's also important to note, as we're explaining that I think the old zoning code would have allowed it.
Yeah.
So it goes hand in hand with some changes made by the Planning and Zoning Commission and us as well.
That is correct. Entertain a motion.
I'll move approval of the third and final reading of Ordinance 1050 as read by the mayor.
Second.
Any discussion by the council? Roll call vote, please.
Drinkow.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Rafi.
Yes.
Scherer.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Bergen.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next item is the Resolution 18-114, a resolution approving a professional services contract to AHTS Architects PLC of Waterloo, Iowa Incorporated for the new 420 building project for the Municipal Housing Commission located at 15th Street Northwest and 16th Street Northwest. I would entertain a motion, please.
I'll move Resolution 18-114, a resolution approving a professional services contract to AHTS Architects PLC of Waterloo, Iowa, for the new 420 building project for the Municipal Housing Commission located at 15th Street Northwest and 16th Street Northwest for an estimated cost of $150,000.
Second.
Motion made and second. Council discussion.
I just have a question, if somebody could shed a little bit more light on how AHTS was chosen?
The commission sought the firm that they wanted to use, and that's how they selected. It was the commission members that made that selection.
Any other questions, comments? Roll call vote, please.
Kangas,
Yes.
McKenzie,
Yes.
Rafi,
Yes.
Scherer,
Yes.
Waldstein,
Yes.
Bergen,
Yes.
Drinkow.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next item, this is the date, time, and place for a public hearing on whether to move forward with providing Highway 3, Bremer Avenue, with 3 lanes of traffic or 4 lanes of traffic once reconstruction work is complete. Did you receive any written or oral comments, Carla?
Mayor, I have 2 written comments, both with objections to a 3-lane. They prefer to keep it a 4-lane, and that is from Levon McEnany, I think, I probably killed that, and Russ and Nora Bruns. And then I did receive 2 emails from Adam Hoffman for the same.
Okay, thank you. Public hearing is open. For those of you, anyone in the audience wish to speak to this project, state your name and position, please.
Good evening, Council. Mr. Mayor, I'm Dennis Happel, the Fire Chief. We have a concern, particularly, in changing to a 3-lane, in that it's going to affect our response time. And the reason I say that is 70% of our volunteers use Bremer Avenue to come to the station. And being a volunteer department, obviously they're in private vehicles. And so the 4-lane, as it currently sets, allows us to maneuver back and forth in traffic. Going to the 3-lane will severely curtail that, and thus, I'm afraid, will increase our response times. Once we're in the trucks, I've been downtown during construction, and I know this isn't going to be typical of the backups we get. However, when we have the ability to diffuse the traffic on the side streets, I also think we're going to have issues with people trying to park and get out of parking stalls that will somewhat eliminate the benefit we will get from the side streets. And so, from my perspective and the officers that we have talked, we would strongly urge you to keep it a 4-lane, just obviously for our reasons of a quicker response time to any emergencies.
Very good. Thank you, Dennis.
Good evening, Council. Matthew Schneider, 1213 Charlene Street. First, I want to thank you for, I'm a lifelong student of economics. I like to study human behavior, the way traffic moves, where businesses locate, what people buy, what makes those decisions. And this was a great exercise. So I have about 20 hours into this exercise, and it was a lot of fun. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. My thanks and praise is going to end there. First of all, on the DOT study, the one that Mr. Little gave, had a very good presentation, very well laid out, easy to understand till you get to this model. You can all see this. I think everyone kind of remembers that from the presentation. So I looked at that, and essentially what that model says is that crashes are going to reduce 19%. All right? We have 0 fatalities, so this is an average year. on Bremer. 0 fatalities, 0 minor injuries, 0 major injuries, I should say, 1 minor injury, and 5.6 possible injuries. A 19% reduction takes that to 0.81, and 4.5 possible injuries. So essentially a rounding error is what we're talking about here. So I was really baffled on what is this push? It doesn't make sense. The crash numbers, they're significantly larger. There's more crashes in the Walmart parking lot than there is on Bremer Avenue. And what hit me was that the big thing that is missing here is human action. No one is looking at human behavior as it pertains to roadways. For example, 2 examples that Mr. Little gave out. 12th Street. I live on up in the Hickory Heights area, so I'm coming down 12th Street. President Colson's house is to the left, and I can see all the way down 12th. Looking down that hill, I see that little hook in the road that goes to the east. And during peak volume times, there's 5 to 6 cars that stack in there. This change would increase that level of service from 11 seconds to 21 seconds. That would take that stacking up from 5 to 6 to about a dozen. So as a human, I'm going to look at that and say, well, I'm going to go down 5th, or I'm going to take 3rd, or some other workaround to that. It's really bad if I'm in the car with an injury and I'm trying to get to the hospital. Severely bad. So, as I was doing these studies, I got upset because why aren't people seeing this? And I couldn't figure it out. 12th, the area where the daycare and West Cedar is, anyone who's dropped their kids off knows that's a total disaster. This would double this disaster. Those are the only 2 level of service areas that Mr. Little gave in his presentation, and he said it would take 10 hours to go through them all. I think it's important. I think we should take 10 hours to go through every single intersection because emergency response time is important and everything else. And this, then I was also baffled about why economic development had a unanimous support for this. This would be economic chaos, absolute economic chaos. This affects a lot of things. As people come to town, they decide, do I want to live here? Traffic is kind of terrible. Not sure I do. Or a Wartburg student is visiting the city. Those are decisions that subliminally that people do make. Ann Rathy asked the question, what kind of feedback do you get in towns that have converted from first responders, emergency, et cetera? And Mr. Little says, we haven't done a study on that. Emergency response, I think, is going to be okay. And thinking about it, really, to me, just doesn't cut it. I think we need to expect better than just kind of thinking. We really need to take a look at that. Matter of fact, I couldn't find any place in Iowa that was studying their emergency response times in terms of level of service. But there's a ton of cities that have reversed this, from Playa del Rey, California, Paw Paw, Michigan, Gainesville, Florida, Pasadena, California. There's one in Iowa that didn't work. That had to convert. I understand Sioux Center is having issues with their 3-lane, and their ADT is like 6,900. And they don't have a railroad tracks, they don't have a bridge, and they don't have all their emergency services strung along their primary corridor. Also, and I will pass this around, if I may bring this around, the ADTs that the Iowa Department of Transportation, they're saying no more than 15 to 17,000. And you can read this. They mention about railroad tracks and everything else, and that's from the Department of Transportation. Also, the Federal Highway Safety Administration, they consider cautiously between 750 and 875 vehicles per hour per direction. So that's another way to look at that. So when you're in that range, consider it cautiously, and then the feasibility less likely above 875 vehicles per hour per direction. And I was I did email Mr. Little, did not get a response on our vehicle per hour per direction. There was some numbers in the WHKS study from 2016, and those numbers were redlining in there. So again, I cannot figure out what is going on here. Also in that WHKS presentation, and I am trying to find some answers on this, but it does state in their maintenance funding is tied to the number of lane miles. So reducing the number of lanes can have a negative impact on maintenance budgets from the state. Additionally, similarly, federal funding can be reduced. I don't know if that's the case. It did say that in the HKS study. So also WHKS suggests in this study that many intersection upgrades need to happen before a 3-lane could ever be considered. So I don't know why that's not being talked about. HKS has several places they said we need controlled intersections and things like that. So I'm going to suggest that we vote no on both measures. And if either measure passes, I'm asking the mayor to veto it. I'm also asking that we put a freeze on all non-essential spending so we can fix our people issues. There's too many upset citizens, too many businesses leaving town, too many people looking at Waverly and they're laughing. There's too much money being senselessly wasted. Too many families are having to live paycheck to paycheck, and that's only going to get severely worse as the effects of the tariffs will hit families. And I don't know where the problems are or who they're with, but I do fully see that we've got the wrong people in the wrong place and probably some people that don't belong. So my suggestion would be to take a step back, let's breathe, let's not spend any money, and let's spend some time working on staff. I think it's a very fixable situation. It's just simply a people problem. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Matt. Anyone else that wish to speak to this?
Go ahead.
Fern Kruger, I did send an email to all of you on the council. I'll just say briefly, I hope you keep it at 4 lanes. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Gary Stafford. I've lived in Waverly my whole life, which is 71 years. 56 of those have been driving up and down Bremer Avenue as a 4-lane, not a 3-lane. I'm sorry, but I think the chief will verify this, that probably most accidents happen because of people not paying attention to what they're doing or on their cell phones. Would that be pretty close? Thank you. But the mayor and I talked about this the other day, and I don't know, I guess I kind of got the conclusion that, he has not lived here his whole life, but he says most people think he has, which is great. I'm glad he's our mayor. And that I think we ought to keep it at a 4-lane going through town. I don't know where Mr. Little got his statistics, but I operated a record here in town for over 7 years, and I do not remember a fatality on Bremer Avenue. So I guess that's all I got to say. I hope you consider everybody and everything and keep it at a 4-lane through Waverly. Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Good evening, Council. Adam Hoffman, 3808 Monahan Drive, Rolling Hills Edition here in Waverly. I come to present to you this evening a petition that was drafted, one of 2 petitions that was drafted. One about 2 years ago it was started, and then this one that was started back, just about 3 weeks ago, something like that. But at any rate, with the conditions of that, the letter states, to retain the current traffic patterns on East and West Bremer Avenue in Waverly, Iowa. Changing to 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane is not necessary at this time with traffic and crash data due to change after current projects are complete. So if I may present this to you. And for the record. I've got a little bit of.
Thank you.
Over here. I do have a little bit of the background behind this. This was pulled off as of 5:45 this evening. There are a total of 428 signatures on the survey. However, 125 of those are from outside of Waverly. 302 of those are in Waverly. 332 of those, of the 428, are in Bremer County, and 29 of those are in Bremer County but outside of Waverly. So there's your demographics of who is responding to this. So if you want to, disqualify, I guess you could jump all the way down and you've got 303 people that have signed. So basically, you need to imagine, because that's the purpose of this in the background statement of the petition, was that this would be presented to you when it came up for a council decision, council vote. So there are 303 people standing behind me that I am therefore representing. So I do know that each one of you did receive an email once 5 people signed this petition. And then periodically from there, other emails were sent out as well. And that would include, I believe, everybody that's up here sitting today. So that's, within that, there's a few signatures that are kind of interesting, a few EMS providers, drivers, professional that work at our hospital. These are all non-solicited. This is shared. This isn't, hey, you need to sign this. This is shared via email, Facebook, word of mouth, however. So it's been out there. The other survey has been out there for 2 years. And the last I looked on it, as of 6:05 this evening, there were 65 signatures. I don't know the demographics behind it, so I can't speak to that one. So moving off of that particular subject into one of the emails that I sent Carla just, I believe, this afternoon that you all received. I thank you for passing that on and addressing that. Yesterday morning, about 10:17, actually, on my dash camera in my car, approaching 39th Street Southeast out to access my subdivision where I live, I was passed by a vehicle. The vehicle had passed me in that center turn lane and the left-hand turn lane to go north off of the opposite side, the north side of 39th Street Southeast. So there's one incident. This afternoon at 3:27 p.m., I sent the video as well to all of you. Tractor passed, several vehicles passed a tractor through the center turn lane as it was going down because it was going obviously too slow and they wanted to get around it. They were being impatient. The tractor was on the shoulder of the road, but those vehicles did cross over into the turning lane that's not intended for that. The further supporting documentation behind that was sent was a media bit that was put together by an Iowa State trooper, stating that those center turn lanes are not for passing, explain how dangerous it is, and those types of things. So if you're wanting to promote that type of activity, go ahead. If you think that passing in that center turn lane is going to be a safe measure for people to entertain and take on, have at it. But I'm not interested in looking at possibly if we can look at something a little bit more interesting is maybe a right-hand turn lane out at 39th Street Southeast is maybe a little bit more beneficial thing to discuss. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Mike Young, Waverly resident. I'm just curious why we're having this discussion, because the last time it was brought up months ago, you had the most vast survey citywide from your store owners on the front, your fire department, your police department, and everybody understood that it wasn't a good idea to have a 3-lane on Bremer Avenue. So this is really ridiculous to me. Then I read some other things about pedestrian traffic. The only time I've ever seen pedestrian traffic in this town is on Christmas when you have your storefronts going on that holiday thing where we have, what's it called?
Christmas greetings on Main.
Yeah, Christmas on Main. To me, that's pedestrian traffic. This is not Cedar Rapids, it's not Dubuque, it's not Des Moines, this is Waverly, Iowa, mostly rural America. And to try to do something that appeases pedestrian traffic over your vehicular traffic to me is ridiculous. So I would say, please keep it a 4-lane.
Thank you. Anyone else have something that has not been brought up or wish to bring up?
Yes, I'm Myron Peterson, on Birch Avenue. I guess I would consider myself a constituent, as people refer to people that vote for somebody to put them in. And under that circumstance, I would say that I don't quite understand why, after 3 of these meetings, that we are still debating this. You as the council already made up your mind once before. Now, just recently, you had a meeting with the DOT. I'm a taxpayer. I don't understand much of any taxes that's paid by the man that was here from DOT to give his institution. And the safety issue, to me, is not relevant. Thanks for your time. Have a good day.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else?
Pete Lampy, and I've spoken to most of you about, and my preference to leave it as a 4-lane at the current time until we've got the alternate corridors in. And I just wanted to state that I appreciate the fact that in both of your versions A and B tonight that you're stipulating funding for a traffic study once that alternate corridor's in. And I think at that point is the better time to make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll close the public hearing. Thank you to all of you that are here in support one way or the other, and for those, and for your comments. I would entertain a motion for, I think maybe it's appropriate in this time to change the rules a little bit. I'd open it up to council discussion before we have a motion. And see that if there's some questions that are there that can be answered by anyone in the room or not, and we'll entertain a motion as you see fit.
I have some questions based on some comments that were made tonight. What kind of real information, not to dismiss anything that Denny has said, but what kind of real information do we have on emergency response time related to 3-lane versus 4-lane? Do we have anything at all? I mean, based on other cities or, our own experience where it's actually been measured and tested in any kind of way?
I don't know of any on other cities, if that's been measured at all. Wasn't presented that way, so I don't know that we'd have anything to go off of from what other cities have done. I'm not sure what the response time has been as far as Waverly's concerned, or how you would estimate whether it would suffer, would it be better? I don't know how that would be done, other than an actual study, so.
Maybe with Chief Hoppel's permission, I can share a little bit on fire department stats. On and off for the last 20 years, I've been the one kind of responsible for filing the state reports, that type of thing. So up until last year or two, I would do some yearly stats, that type of thing. And while I certainly appreciate Chief Hoppel's comments on needing to get the volunteers to the station, if you go back and look at our stats, the most impactful thing that's happened to us as far as a response time is when the lights were retimed and they took the ability for us to have the law center put them on flashing yellow for us. You can go back and look at our stats and pinpoint when that happened. That measure itself has added anywhere from 60 to 90 seconds for the volunteers to get to the station. So just the way the lights were set up added a minute to a minute and a half in our response. Our time from leaving the station to getting the first truck on scene was not impacted quite as much, but it added another 15 to 30 seconds. So it's surprising that that issue hasn't come up along with some of this other discussion. I would hope that somebody would bring that forward. As far as other communities, I did have an opportunity to travel through Independence a couple times in the last month. And Old Highway 20 has been converted to a 3-lane. So I visited with the police chief there, who also was a deputy sheriff for Buchanan County. And he says that from talking to his staff as well as the fire department staff, responding on that 3-lane is their preferred way. They say that the center turn lane becomes their through lane for them. It's real easy for folks to get out of the way, those type of things. Their configuration is very similar to ours. We have not, the diet is not that we've narrowed the street. We're just narrowing the number, reducing the number of lanes. So as you look through, especially the downtown east side, there's 10 extra feet that won't have vehicles on it that can be used for both the volunteers to respond as well as emergency vehicles, large equipment, those type of things. So while I certainly appreciate Chief Soppel's concern about getting the firemen there, I think in conjunction with whatever decision is made, we need to relook at the ability to have the lights flash on Bremer Avenue to at least help alleviate that delay. And as far as will a 3rd lane or going to a 3-lane configuration impact the ability to get there, I don't know. I traveled 10 blocks of Bremer Avenue to get to the station, and I travel 20 blocks coming from CUNA Mutual, and those of us that have the blue flashing light very seldom have issues with people getting out of our way. So I don't know if that helps at all, but.
So what I hear you saying is that volunteers who are responding have a flashing light on their vehicle when they're heading for the station, is that correct?
It's an option that's available to us, yes.
I think that's pretty interesting information. I would hope they would be using them. And I would think that if I saw somebody flashing, I don't care what color it is, behind me, I'd get out of the way.
I have a question that might be in a little bit different direction here, but I would like to get a little background about the $200,000 traffic study. I wasn't aware that we had discussed this in the past. Is this same traffic study that we're going to be taking a look at later in the agenda at the corner of 3rd Street, or Highway 3 and 10th Avenue? This is a totally different?
It's completely different.
What is this traffic study intended to accomplish, and what are we going to be doing with the information that we get from it?
I asked to have,
Put that on, so.
I had a conversation with Mr. Cherry a month or so ago, and it's in the plans for the year 2020 and early in the year to do a citywide traffic study. And the estimated cost is about $200,000. There is no money at this time budgeted for it. It would be asked for in the 2019-20 fiscal year. Council has the option to not do it if they so choose when the budget time comes around. But I'm responsible for that. And but it was in response to some questions that had been asked, and particularly with the Parkway opening up and things, Jerry and I both, and I think probably everyone else would agree that we need to see what our traffic patterns are and what they're going to be in order to facilitate improvements, irregardless of what Bremer Avenue turns out to be. So that's where that came from. I know it caused some confusion because everybody's talking about where are you going to find the money. You're spending. A lot of emails today in regards to that, but it's not in the budget. There are no funds budgeted, and it will be the council's option to do that the next budget year.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that explanation.
Just on that, Mike, I know Brian and I have both talked about looking at the lights as well. Would this study include looking at the lights?
Well, the scope of services have yet to be determined, so that will be certainly open for discussion and up to the council to decide on how expansive that study is and what you want to look at.
Okay.
Can I ask what the merits were of adding it to this resolution rather than dealing with it at that fiscal year at budget time?
I just felt that it would be prudent, in my mind at least, to make sure that it happened. And no particular, even though the council has the option, but we'll have enough data or enough time with Bremer Avenue and the Parkway both open in order to see what's really happening, whether it's what it's going to do, impact on businesses downtown Waverly or on the corridor.
So are there statistics currently that we'll be able to compare it with in 2 years? It's in both resolutions, so if you do convert, do we have any data now to compare it with post-conversion?
The 2016 WHKS presentation that was made to the council at that time has traffic counts and things in. I didn't know anything about it till mid-morning when someone brought it to my attention, and I did pull it up online at a past council agenda, August 22nd, 2016, if you care to get into the agenda manager and pull it up. And there's 30-some pages of information and about 150 pages of diagrams and other appendices and things to support what they're talking about.
So is that where the cost estimate came from? Is how much that one cost?
That was a figure that Mike just came up with. He would anticipate it would be about 200,000, so.
I guess I had a similar question to Ron when I saw that, especially the way it's worded. It says, "and approving the funding." To me, I understand the mayor's positioning that it just encourages us, or in his mind encourages us to fund it. But as this resolution is worded, and as we see, the public holds us to the wording of resolutions, to me, we're obligating ourselves to fund this regardless. So I even made notes here to make a friendly amendment, striking that language from whichever resolution is brought forward. I think it should be tackled as a separate item at budgeting and not tied to the approval of this.
And the council will have opportunity to make amendments to either resolution if they wish to, so.
Yeah, second question?
No, that was a discussion, a little bit, but with the rest of the discussion, answer my questions.
So one thing that I kind of wanted to bring up was the discussion of the kind of guarantee or buyer's remorse. So I believe that there was an understanding with people on this council that we could, say, switch to 3 lanes, and then after a certain amount of time, 6 months, we would have the opportunity to switch back to 4 lanes, and the Iowa DOT would pay for the repainting. And that is not the case.
That's not the case.
That is not the case. There is no guarantee that if we try out 3 lanes and don't like it, that they will switch us back. That was something they did previously when this was still considered experimental, but that guarantee is no longer available. I wanted to kind of make it clear about that.
But it's also, another correction that he made was that he was wrong in the estimate as a result of being wrong in thinking that they had to do the grading before
Correct.
the painting, that
Correct.
it isn't as
So the other clarification is that there is no grooving into the road for the line painting. That there's not some kind of long-term commitment. If we switch to one or switch to the other, we don't have to kind of get rid of the grooving.
So the estimate of $200,000 was high.
Probably about double what it is, yeah.
No, I don't.
That's how I read his email. I thought that was in his email that he sent to all of us.
It would be, if, regardless of which lane configuration is chosen initially.
Correct.
The DOT will stripe and take care of the traffic signals at their cost.
For the first decision.
Currently.
Yes.
But if we were
If
to
we
say,
change
if
it,
we change it later, it would be an estimated cost of about 100,000
That's for striping, plus.
for the striping.
plus
traffic lights.
Plus another amount for revising the traffic signals.
Moving the traffic signals, okay.
I have a copy of his email here, and he is estimating changing from the 3-lane back to a 4-lane. Total approximate cost would be approximately $110,000. And removing the 4-lane and going to a 3-lane in the future would be approximately $120,000. So slightly over $100,000
In either case.
in either case.
Ron, I don't know if you can find it quickly, but the phrasing that he used on making the switch, as I read it, it was, if we just don't like it and want to do it, then yes, we would have to cover the cost ourselves. But if we could demonstrate reasons why it is not acceptable, higher crash rates, traffic backups, those type of things, that would be handled differently. That's kind of how I read his comments.
See if I can, reading from his email, and I'll try to do this short version here. There was a time when DOT did offer to convert roadways back to 4-lane corridors at DOT expense. These offers were extended in the early years, back in the 1990s, when these programs were considered experimental. These offers were made by the manager of the safety funding programs. These offers were never accepted, as no community that got a safety funding grant to implement a 4 to 3-lane conversion in Iowa ever decided to reverse. When made, I don't believe it was ever done for a trial period as short as 6 months. The DOT expected the community to give the conversion a fair chance, generally viewed as a period of at least a couple of years. And he does, that said, let's see, so that's really all he speaks to that.
I guess maybe I was focused more on the comment that nobody has asked to go back that has done the 3-lane conversion. To me, that spoke volumes.
Now, also looking in terms of, say, painting to 3 lanes, the new construction, the parts east of the river, there are no current lane markings. So whether we draw that as 3 lanes or 4 lanes, the price is effectively the same. But if we're looking west of the river, there are regions that have been painted for 4 lanes that would need to be the 4 lanes pulled up and put down as 3 lanes. So I'm curious about the added cost of switching to 3 lanes west of the river, those places where we already have 4 lanes painted. Is that accounted for in the budgeting? I mean, anywhere that there's no lane markers, we put down 3, 4 lanes, it's the same cost. But when we're looking at that stretch where 4 lanes have already been painted on, well, then there is a difference in cost between 3 and 4 lanes. The ones that were done last year, we'd basically have to pull those up and put them back down as 3 if we're switching from 4 to 3.
My understanding is that the DOT would do that at their cost at this point.
At this point.
Yep.
Let me add one thing to Dan's question. I did find one section of his email that does deal with an exception that might occur if we were going back to a 4-lane. And he has, what are the reasons the city would want to go back to 4 lanes? Are there real mobility issues that can't be resolved through adjustments to the signal timing, phasing, coordination plans? Are there real problems with truck turning movements west of the bridge? Are there unexpected problems with emergency response that can't be addressed? If these sorts of problems arise, I'm confident that the Iowa DOT will be a partner in solving them, even if that meant reversing the conversion, which is not a promise to pay for it, but it's just saying that they will work for us if there are actual issues that arise after the 3-lane conversion has been made.
Well, I will say one of my concerns is that I believe this was brought up with the idea of potential cost savings. That if we consider the 3 lanes versus 4 lanes now, there's the opportunity for cost savings. And with the loss of this kind of guarantee language that, I had this understanding of, I don't know kind of what those cost savings are that are kind of occurring now that won't occur later, other than the repainting. I am not a big fan of going back and revisiting decisions that the council has made previously. So I'm concerned that we're revisiting an old decision without kind of proper justification for it.
I think it's important, Brian, though, and I talked with a lot of citizens about this too, that there is some misunderstanding about what the original resolution said. It wasn't a final decision. It was a decision at that point in time, and I don't have the language in front of me, but sure look it up. At that point in time, to make a 4-lane decision with the clear intent, which was part of the resolution, to revisit this when we had more information later down the road and come back and look at 3-lane and 4-lane again. So I think a lot of people, don't know the exact wording of the resolution, but that's my summary of it, but it's, that really is the content. Yeah.
I think you're right, Mike. I guess what I would piggyback with Brian on that is what has changed. We don't have any more information because we don't have another corridor open to have other traffic patterns to look at. And that was what was in that resolution, was that once we had another corridor open with additional traffic patterns, that we could come back and look at it. And
right.
we're not at that point yet because Parkway.
And that's where the potential savings in cost would have been an argument to come back earlier than perhaps anticipated, but to come back to it was always part of the resolution.
I guess I question whether knowing what the new traffic patterns will be will change anyone's mind. I think.
That is a good question, but that was the decision made by the previous council.
Right. If anything, Cedar River Parkway is going to pull traffic from downtown, which makes it a better candidate for 3 lanes. And so I don't know that it'll change anyone's mind. I mean, several of the speakers tonight said safety was irrelevant. So how will we know? If we keep it 4 lanes, you're still not going to be able to compare what response times or traffic times are to 3-lane. The DOT is saying most of the backups can be solved by green arrows, converting the traffic signals and the timing of the lights. So I guess I'm not sure knowing what Cedar River Parkway is going to do, exactly whether that makes a difference for what we do with Bremer Avenue.
This traffic study that WHKS did actually went out to 2036, anticipating growth in Waverly and vehicular traffic and the turning patterns and the intersection problems and things. So, once I saw that, it had information in there that I wish this council would have received some time ago. But unfortunately, I didn't know about it, and no one else brought it up either, so, and.
Perhaps one mistake that we on the council made was that we forgot to tell the people who are building the Cedar Parkway to move slowly, and that Bremer Avenue should move quickly so that we could actually get the comparison. I guess part of our problem is that one thing's getting done so quickly, we don't really get the comparison that we thought we were going to get. I don't know if that's really a problem, but that would have been the way to get it.
I guess I'd just like to take an opportunity to thank the council for indulging my request, I guess, to revisit this. And I feel that we are holding true, maybe a little bit faster than what we thought, but true to the first resolution where we did say we would revisit it. I certainly wanted to revisit it because of the potential cost savings down the road. But I'm also concerned with new habits being formed. We've put up with construction now for almost 2 years. We put up with the loss of the 3rd Street Bridge for almost a year before construction. So we haven't had a normal traffic pattern in town for over 3 years. People have adjusted to that. They find ways around town. I found it interesting, one of the photos that was out on social media showing cars backed up from First Street East through First Street West across the bridge. They were complaining about, oh, here's what a 3-lane will do to you. If you look in, they were faced west. If you look at that photo, they were backed up over a block in 2 lanes waiting at the 4th Street West Bremer. So regardless of which decision is made tonight, there's going to be traffic backups. There's no way around that. Both of them are inherently going to cause that. We saw what a simple light timing change did at West Bremer and 4th Street a few months ago. I haven't had anybody complain about having to sit through that light now in the last 6 months. Before that, that's all you heard about. I think we can address the issues as the community grows through some of those type of things. I would just hate to see us stay 4-lane with the notion that at some point in the future, we're going to come back and disrupt traffic patterns again and force people into a 3-lane configuration. You're going to have the same pushback you have now. Everybody thinks they know what Bremer as a 4-lane will be. To me, it's the cost savings, the hard dollars, but to me, it's the habit-forming cost of not doing it now, and that's really more of the reason I wanted to bring it forward now. I agree with Ann. I don't see the Parkway adding more traffic to the downtown, so I think most logical people would say it's going to take traffic off of it. So what do we need to study? If there's less traffic on it, the study is more in the timing of the lights, those type of things. So, and then in this last week or so, I've had several pointed emails from folks on both sides that want 3-lane, that want 4, that say we're supposed to listen to the constituents. But what they're really saying is listen to me and vote the way I want you to. To me, as I listen to the constituents and take away their choice, 3 lanes or 4 lanes, what they're all saying is, I want a safe, convenient way to get through town. To me, both of these options provide some level of safety. If you look at the data, the 3-lane gives an increased safety margin. Both of them add convenience, except during peak times. We're all going to have to put up with that. So to me, it is, what are some of the other intangibles that maybe need to be looked at? The comment that who cares about pedestrian traffic, I would hesitate for you to walk downtown and talk to the merchants that put ridiculous days on and block streets off so that they can have folks come down there. I would dare you to go and talk to them that love to have the firemen's convention water ball games and stuff downtown to get the extra foot traffic in their door. To me, pedestrian traffic is key to a downtown. I don't know why we wouldn't look at that. To me, a 3-lane enhances a downtown's ability to draw people to it, both in vehicles, both in foot traffic, bicycles, whatever mode they take. So I'm having a hard time coming up with a reason not to support 3 lanes. There's always going to be snow piled in the middle of the street during the winter. You're going to drive around it. You're going to make a left-hand turn from the right-hand lane. It's no different than what we do now with 4 lanes. But 3 lanes, to me, just has some of those intangibles that I think will make the community better. And that's where my head's at, I guess.
I just want to second what Dan has to say about community opinion. We are to listen to what the constituents say, and I try to do it, and they're saying a lot of stuff. I try to figure out whether I'm hearing more from 4-lane people or 3-lane people. I had a charming moment on Sunday morning when I was going into worship. I got a bulletin from an usher who then whispered to me in a somewhat urgent voice, 3 lanes. And I thought, wow, that really takes lobbying to into a new dimension. But I have to say that I have heard a lot of an opinion on both sides, to the point where I almost think it's a wash. And so therefore, what do we say about citizen opinion? I think we should listen to all of it. But I don't see how you can possibly say, if you choose one or the other, that you're not listening to the citizens. I mean, sooner or later, we have the unenviable task of having to make a decision that may not be very popular. And if I could just add one thing more to the discussion, one of my relatives in Bismarck, North Dakota, found out about our discussion. And she sent me an email this morning and said, you know, we had this discussion in Bismarck a few years ago. She said it was, we were trying to figure out what to do with Main Street, Bismarck. Bismarck has 72,000 people and a really pretty vibrant downtown, pretty busy. She said it was Main Street. I checked. It wasn't the street that's called Main Street, but it was the main commercial avenue that they use. And she said, we thought about it. Everybody thought they were right, and it took a long time. And finally, we decided, let's just try it. We'll go to 3 lanes, and after 3 years, we know we're not going to like it, and we're going to go back to 4. She said, we're still using 3 lanes. Everybody got used to it. Most people got used to it. They like it a lot. They have no interest in going back to 4 lanes. And she said, I don't know what they'll do in Iowa, but I'm just telling you what the mindset was in the middle of North Dakota. So I thought it was an interesting comment, because I also heard today from a constituent who said, you can't compare Waverly to Clear Lake or to Cresco because it's not apples to apples. But I think maybe Waverly to Bismarck might be.
You know what Mike just said before the relative story, which is interesting, and thanks for that. But before that, the description of constituent input and feedback is significantly different this time. For me, at least, I can only speak from the emails and the phone calls and the conversations that I've had. 2 years ago, there was virtually no one who was contacting me for being in support of 3-lane. This time, it is very evenly split in terms of what I'm hearing from constituents, and that is a change. I mean, if we're revisiting it now and talking about, I know we're supposed to be talking about some of the traffic pattern changes that we might not be able to determine quite yet, but I do think, from my perspective at least, there is a change in the numbers of people who are supportive of a 3-lane compared to 2 years ago.
Well, I would also say that the comments that I'm getting regarding, like everyone else, I've gotten about equal number of comments, 3 lanes versus 4 lanes. The people who are supporting 3 lanes are generally referring to the data, referring to the studies, talking about safety. A lot of the people who are in favor of 4 lanes aren't giving me clear-cut reasons. They're saying it's always been 4 lanes, I like 4 lanes, I want 4 lanes, but I'm not hearing the data to back it up. And I'm a mathematician, I like numbers. When Mr. Snyder presented the least squares approximation formula for the exponential growth, yeah, I actually like that formula. I teach it on a regular basis, so that didn't scare me. I like data, and I'd like data to support my decisions. I think the data is pretty clear in terms of supporting the 3-lane option. I'm not sure it's appropriate for us to be making that decision. That's more my point.
Yeah, I think I would agree with everyone that I would say my comments, emails, comments after I do a person's prescription at the office about how they want me to vote are pretty much equal for either side, and that surprised me. I was surprised how many 3-lane people there are. The most common reason I hear for people who don't want to convert is that they don't want change. I think people are worried. They worry about business downtown dropping. They worry about it taking longer to get across town. They worry about first responder response time. They worry about school bus time. But if you look at the data from all sorts of communities, not just in Iowa, it doesn't support that. And, we all got an email from the school superintendent who was in favor of converting. The hospital's been in support of that, economic development. I mean, it's hard not to look at that data, and Mike is right. Whenever you have a constituency that's pretty equally divided, you're going to have unhappy people. But I guess that's why we sit up here. And so when it's that type of decision, for me anyhow, it's important for me to make a decision based on data and not on emotions. Or else you'll go back and forth depending on who is the loudest, which isn't necessarily how decisions like this should be made, in my opinion.
I would add too on the downtown businesses, just again from my experience, the last time I heard from merchants downtown, and the only position I heard was 4-lane. This time it's split from the ones that I've heard, at least. So some still want 4-lane, but some want 3-lane now.
And I think, I agree too with what Dan said about people getting into habits. Our habits have been all over the map with how to drive on Bremer Avenue the last few years. And, patience is wearing thin because the projects are hard for the people who live on Bremer Avenue, the merchants, all of us trying to navigate the cones without knocking anything over. But I think that Bremer Avenue, the town deserves a fresh start, I think, when all this is done. And I think that we've had to change how we drive on that road. I haven't driven on a huge stretch of that road for a long time because of where I live, I can't get to the road. So I think adapting and doing the conversion at the end of the project, I think the timing is better to do it then, when we're all going to have to learn a new pattern anyhow. But I find it hard to ignore the data in this case. So.
Okay, any other discussion?
I might just say, everyone has spoken very eloquently about this, and I don't want to belabor the subject or make the meeting any longer than it needs to be, but I think, one of the issues that people have is change is very difficult, and people are concerned about having change of any kind. I have the feeling that if we currently had a 3-lane configuration, and we were looking at changing it to a 4-lane configuration, we would be having exactly the same arguments, probably in slightly different way and different people, but I think we would be going through the same kind of process that we're doing now. So in making my decision, what I'm looking at is really the two parts of the scale are safety and the ability to get through town quickly. And I think the DOT has made their case that 3-lane configuration is safer. I know from my own experience and my own observation, I believe that very strongly. I am very sympathetic to those people who are concerned about traffic backing up, because there will be times where they will be stuck at a light and they will be very angry about this being a 3-lane configuration. And I guess that's what we have to take the heat for if that's what we decide to do. To my mind, I have to put some extra emphasis on the safety part. If we can make Bremer Avenue safer, and not just for pedestrians or bicyclists, like a lot of people have been saying, but for vehicle traffic also, without significantly decreasing or increasing the amount of time it takes to travel Bremer Avenue, I think that is a very important consideration.
I think one of the examples that I found most helpful was about Ingersoll Avenue in Des Moines. We had I think they passed it out at the DOT meeting, but very busy street and a lot of reluctance and anxiety about changing that, and it's been positive. And actually, traffic flows better, and so traffic to the merchants has increased because people realize that you can get through there, but the speeds of driving became more uniform, and that has something to do with why it's more safe too. So I thought that example was a good one.
I mean, I want to say that on the safety issue, and not to belittle it at all, but the reason, the last time, well, let me back up. I have always personally, individually, been in favor of 3-lane. The last time I voted on this, 2 years ago, I voted for 4-lane. The main reason being that, yes, there is a safety issue that I thought was compelling, but it wasn't, and someone brought this up earlier, it doesn't have to do with fatalities. It's not that kind of safety issue. Generally speaking, it doesn't, okay? That's not the kind of, we're talking about accidents, right? But not fatalities. And so the last time, for me, the combination of that kind of safety improvement with the vast majority of constituents I was hearing from with support for 4-lane, I thought it was best to go with what I heard people saying they wanted. This time, we still have the same improvement. I mean, if you trust the data and you're looking at the data and reading about other cities to compare with who are comparable. There's another one, by the way, that hasn't been much talked about, which is Fairfield. And you look at that and you say, yes, I mean, it's the information we have shows that there will be improved safety for both pedestrians, which is important in my opinion, as well as for vehicular traffic. But for me, what has changed now to reconsider this is that the public sentiment has shifted. And again, not with an overwhelming majority for either side, but a split that was not there before, at least as far as I'm seeing it.
I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm seeing it a little differently. I would agree that I've heard a little bit more from people in favor of 3 lanes this time, but even looking at tonight, we didn't have a single person stand up and talk in favor of 3 lanes. We didn't have a single written comment submitted to Carla for 3 lanes. We've all had some emails both ways, but just that is kind of an overwhelming, if you want to talk about a split, you would think that if there is that feeling for making the change, that there would be people here speaking in favor of the 3 lanes, and we didn't get any of that. In addition, the mayor brought up the previous survey, and I think I referenced it when we talked about this in the study session, that projections out, and looking at statistics as to why not to go to 3 lanes, that the projections out to 2036 or whatever, noted that the 15th and 16th Street West intersections the level of service would go down with a 3-lane as opposed to 4-lane. It noted that 12th Street would definitely go down. And 12th Street was going to go down in a big way because you would have cars both turning left to go north onto 12th Street off of Bremer, as well as those cars wanting to turn left off of 12th Street to go east onto Bremer. Both of those, right now, it's difficult at times there, but those would be significant. And it also noted that 5th Street West would have a level of service go down. So there was 3 data points that service, level of service would drop with 3 lanes. In addition, Mr. Little, during his presentation, talked about, when we talked about, well, what about, having part of it 3-lane and keeping part of it 4-lane, he said that's where the greatest level of trouble is, where you have those transition zones from 3 lanes to 4 lanes and back. Well, in their own proposal, we're essentially going to have that downtown from First Street West to 4th Street West. It's going to still be 4-lane, but marked kind of jiggly around to 3 lanes, but you're going to be transitioning cars coming west over the bridge in 3 lanes, going to have to shift over to that 4th lane, essentially, because the truck turning lanes are going to be there. And the same thing coming east to 4th Street, you're going to have a shuffle there as well. So right there, they're having transition zones already where they've said that that's where you have the most problems. So those are a couple of concerns I still have that haven't been addressed, and I was looking for further information to address those, and they really hadn't done that. And again, why I was wanting to see that traffic study for additional, when the additional corridor opened, to see how maybe that would change some of that traffic pattern of people coming, instead of coming on Bremer, on some of those that they might be taking the Parkway to go to the high school, for example, and turning off at 10th Avenue there, as opposed to coming down Bremer and turning onto 16th, going on to 16th from 10th Avenue. So again, I don't think we have the data to do this. If you want to say, yeah, we're going to save $100,000 3 years from now by restriping it if we decide to make a change, then, okay. But again, I don't think that's necessarily listening to the constituents, which I do think has been, while there is a split, I don't think it's an even split. I think it's been a fairly heavily still wanting to stay. And I agree, some of it is the change factor. And I also look at the numbers and say that their studies show overall 3 lanes have been better. But again, applying it to Waverly's situation versus every other situation, every city is unique. There are no apples to apples comparisons, because there isn't another Waverly out there with the same scenario. So that's just my thoughts on it.
I think it's important to note, though, that on the WHKS study that you just referenced that goes out to 2036, that they still, even after all of those caveats, are pointing out where there potentially could be some issues. They still recommend going to a 3-lane, and they identify very clearly, at least when they did this study, whenever that was, 2016, or whenever it was, 16? Yeah, to signalize Bremer and 12th, to signalize,
8th and Bremer.
or so is it 8th and Bremer, I'm sorry.
Well, a couple of them.
Yeah, they've got 3 or 4 different control modifications, and they have some other recommendations that they make to address, some of that, and still recommend that going to 3-lane is going to be better. So, I just want to point that out, too, as part of that report.
So one other thing I feel like bringing up is the construction going on in Cedar Falls on University Avenue. Because I remember when they first said, oh, we're going to put roundabouts on University Avenue. And there was a blow up on social media of how this is going to be horrible, this is going to be awful, no one's going to want to drive on University Avenue, it'll be the worst thing ever. And then they put in about half of the turnabouts, and every person that I spoke with said, oh my gosh, I love those turnabouts. It's so much easier to turn left onto University Avenue. I don't have to wait for the signal. I can turn right, go to the roundabout, and then go back in the other direction. Every doomsayer that I heard talking about the roundabouts on University Avenue seemed to be let down by how well it now works in response. And I think, I don't know, maybe that raised my faith in Iowa DOT just a little bit, that maybe now and then they do know what they're talking about. So So that's my perspective. So that, what could have been a disaster actually turned out pretty well.
And we have to assume that those roundabouts were inspired by the one that we have in our town.
Absolutely, the Wartburg roundabout.
The Wartburg roundabout, yes.
I would caution, Brian, I work in Cedar Falls and I deal with a lot of young drivers and there's a lot of them that aren't real fond of them yet. but
I
they're
will
learning.
admit that there was a learning period on how to use the roundabouts. And I think that even now, people who don't drive them regularly struggle with them. That, there is a learning curve on how to drive on a roundabout. But, once you've done it enough times, you learn how to look left.
Well, are you discussed out?
I guess I just have a question about how do we proceed with two resolutions? And I heard, Dan was talking about a friendly amendment about removing whether to keep the traffic study in there. So I'm just wondering how we proceed.
I will entertain a motion for either resolution, 18115B or 18115A.
I would say prior to that and prior to, if Dan's going to make a friendly resolution to Ann, when we get into strategic planning and planning for budget sessions, my plan all along has been to ask for a traffic study or a light, at least for the lights, to kind of look at, see what we can do for some of the lighting situations, 10th Avenue and 4th Street and that. So whether we include it in this one or not, my plan coming up here this fall and into the spring when we get into budget is to still be asking for something like that.
I would certainly agree that it belongs in the strategic planning, but probably not in any motion here.
Mayor, if you'll allow me maybe to move things along, I would like to move Resolution 18115A, a resolution supporting the Iowa Department of Transportation's plan to convert Highway 3 through Waverly from a 4-lane to a 3-lane roadway geometry, period. That implies dropping anything that references the funding for a study from the resolution.
Okay, we have a motion on resolution 118, or 181.
You absolutely can, but I would suggest to amend the resolution as well in that motion.
Well, he's
Because
just making a resolution right now.
Basically, you're
strike it
striking
from
the
the-
last whereas from the resolution.
Last
Right.
whereas and after,
Right.
the and after 3-lane road geometry in the therefore.
He just didn't voice the rest of it. Is that all right?
Correct, and that's what I was asking for, is just to voice that part of it, so we're good.
Well, I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded. Resolution 18115A is supporting the Iowa Department of Transportation's plan to convert Iowa Highway 3 through Waverly from a 4-lane to a 3-lane roadway geometry. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Mike did.
Thank you, sorry.
Well, I would just say I didn't think it was appropriate to bring this up, but if it's in front of me, I have to vote what I think is best for the community.
I would hope you all had
Do that.
open ears.
Whichever way we vote, I'm sure
Absolutely.
it's our opinion, it's in the best interest of the community.
Roll call vote, please.
McKenzie?
Yes.
Rothy?
Yes.
Scherer?
Yes.
Waldstein?
Yes.
Bergen?
Yes.
Drinkow?
Yes.
Kangas?
No.
Motion carried 6-1 to convert, recommend to the DOT from the council to convert Bremer Avenue from 4-lane to 3-lane. Thank you all for your attendance and your patience with this decision. Moving on, Next item on the agenda is public comments for any item that's not on the agenda. If anyone has an item to speak to?
Matthew Schneider, 1213 Charlene Street. First, I want to say, when Bremer gets complete, I haven't heard any discussion of bringing out a town celebration to bring business back to Bremer from either chamber or economic development. And I should probably be presenting that to them, but I think that is important. Businesses are hurting right now, and so we definitely need to do that. So that's number one. And I look forward to the discussion when we go to 3-lane about how fast we can turn it back to 4.
Just a comment on the downtown business. The chamber is very active in doing that. They're already looking on how to reintroduce people to the downtown, to the business districts in town. So I don't know if it'll be a community celebration per se, but they do an excellent job of promoting the business districts in Waverly with their programs now, so hopefully folks will take advantage of that when they do.
Fortunately, Christmas on Main won't be very far away by the time it's completed.
Hopefully it'll be done by then.
Yeah.
Have a dog pile with all the Denny the Detour dogs.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the public on an item that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, moving on to consent calendar. Following items will be acted upon by votes on a single motion without separate discussion unless someone has from the council or the public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Item number 1, pay request from HTS Architects for the Waverly South Riverside Park Master Plan for $3,545.75. Pay request from Stanley Consultants Incorporated for the Cedar River Parkway Construction Services, amount of $32,152.15. Pay request from Stanley Consultants for the Cedar River Parkway Phase 2, final design for the amount of $3,821.50. Pay request from Kramer and Associates for the Cedar River Parkway East Improvements, 2018, in the amount of $154,806.58. Pay request from Boland Recreation for swings at Coleman Park in the amount of $3,147. Pay request from McClure Engineering for the 20th Street Northwest reconstruction project for the amount of $12,942.38. Approve the purchase of a replacement out front mower with optional mulching kit for Leisure Services Parks Division from Dykey Implement Company of Waverly for the amount of $21,110. Class C liquor license for the Waverly Volunteer Fire Association. Class B liquor license for Cobblestone Inn and Suites. Entertain a motion.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any council discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carried. Regular business update from the Waverly Volunteer Firefighters Association regarding the 2018 Firefighter Association Convention.
Good evening again. We'll move this right along for you. You all received our information, and so as I go through this, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. The convention is going very well. Hopefully we don't get a rain like we did last night. That will mirror what we did in 16. But we will be starting on the 5th of September through the 9th. And guests will start arriving on August 31st at the campsite. We have 1,508 campsites sold to date. Our convention events incorporate the city services in the Waverly Golf Course and also the Waverly Bowl-In. We have 123 teams for the golf course and 54 teams for the Waverly Bowl-In, which is it's doing very well. The traditional competitions in 16, we wanted downtown, and we're very successful with that. Due to our construction phasing, et cetera, we're not sure that that's going to be met. And so our traditional competitions will be on First Street Northwest along Coleman Park. And so that way we can, we have to give the IFA an answer of where we're going to be. And so that's where we have chosen.
You were downtown the last time, right?
Correct. Yep. So we feel that that's going to suit our needs, and obviously the community, a lot of green space, et cetera, so that should accommodate all of that.
Dennis, do you have an approximate time for that competition day?
We will
Is it pretty much all day?
We'll shut First Street down at 6 in the morning, and we will be done approximately 4:30. Now, there was a suggestion that our parade route will also go through that area. And so there was a suggestion that it remain closed until after the parade, that we still can discuss and decide yes or no to leave it open, shut it down, or just what we want to do, what the city would like us to do. We have a convention-sponsored craft show at the Cross Point Church, which we had last time, very good attendance. Things went very well. The convention parade is basically going to follow the Heritage Day Parade, other than we will line up on 7th Avenue, come down 12th Street, onto 5th Avenue, and then follow pretty much the Heritage parade route. Last time, we lined up out by the sale barn and came in that way past Bartles. With the railroad construction, we're not sure they'll be completed, and so we've altered our plans to accommodate that. Yes, we've altered our plans for a lot of things. But it's working out. We're doing okay. Community entertainment, the weekend before, September 1st, starting at 8 o'clock, we have the 8th Street Band at the convention tent, and we invite the entire community, it's free of charge, to come out, help us out to kick off the convention, and we hope to see a lot of people attend that. Just as a thank you for putting up with us for the next week, we'll give you the thank you at the beginning. So that is September 1st to date. City contribution. Last time we had the convention, the city contributed approximately $7,700 to the convention. This was in barricading, rock surfacing, just different miscellaneous items that we needed, and the city so graciously offered to contribute to the convention. And we would like to have a little buy-in from the city again this time. If they would allocate $5,000 to help us with our advertising and everything that goes with this, we would sure appreciate it. Obviously, that's up to the city to make that decision. Keep in mind that through the last convention, the firefighters contributed back a little over $16,000 in equipment to the city and its residents for updated equipment and things that we were able to buy through the convention funding that we had raised. The liquor license you just took care of. Thank you very much for that, because that is a big part of our proceeds. One other thing that we would like to bring up is we have talked about our contributions just briefly going forward after this convention. And we think that if everything goes according to Hoyle and with what we already have in place, that our contribution back to the city will be greater than it was last time. We are looking at a training tower just south of the museum in the park there, and I brought this up to several of the city staff. Haven't gotten any feedback, but I see Stanley Consultants was on here for that, and we would like approximately 100 feet south of the station for the training tower. And so as you're moving forward, we would appreciate if you would consider that. So that is it in a quick nutshell to keep things rolling. The golf cart issue, I think we brought up last time. If everybody's in favor of what we did in 16, it's identical to that. Probably a little more leniency to the west to get them up to the Dirty Dog and that area because of the construction on Bremer Avenue. But that will all be on off-street routes, so Fast and Furious, any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What's the average number of participants per campsite?
Oh,
6,
Lord,
8?
that's a very good question. We will have approximately 2,000 to 2,200 people attend. And so, yeah, you can break that out. You'll have, I'm sorry, Rob? Rob is chair of the convention.
Okay.
Good evening, council and mayor. If you look at it, most people that buy a campsite buy 2 per camper. So we can't say that there's 4 per campsite.
Okay.
But there is, yes, about 2,200 people approximately. We're just over 1,500 campsites as of right now.
Okay.
I keep needing to be brought up to speed on stuff, so remind me. I assume that participants are paying a gate fee of some sort to come, and
Correct.
does that cover much or most of your costs?
That covers a substantial amount of our costs. We provide 2 meals, all our entertainment, obviously the setup and tear down of the facility. We have to buy our shower trailers from the IFA, and then we are reimbursed by the next town. It's kind of an interesting formula, but everything seems to work out. But we do get most of our proceeds from registration and from selling the alcohol during the convention at our event tent.
How much do you typically profit? And how much stays here in Waverly and how much goes to the state organization?
The profit is all over the board, simply because weather constraints, and there's just so many things that go into that number, quite honestly, there's a gentleman's agreement that is never discussed outside the IFA, because different towns will have different things happen in their case, and they'll think, well, they did this and we should be able to get this, and that very rarely is the case. We have a little bit better situation here because I own the land and we're taking advantage of that. What was the second part of your question? And
How much stays here and how much goes?
how much
To
we pay
the state.
State
IFA?
organization. Is that a nonprofit organization?
Yes, IFA, Iowa Firefighters Association.
We pay back to the IFA, I believe, without looking at my notes, it's $4 to $6 per guest, and that goes back into their fund to continue their operations.
I'm assuming with the competition site being moved to First Street Northwest, that traffic is going to be detoured on Second Street? Is that what the plan is? Fourth Street.
Signalized.
Okay.
4th Street and 5th Avenue is the detour route.
All right. And there isn't any problem with people having egress and access to their properties?
Sure there is.
Well, obviously it's inconvenience, but I mean, will they still be able to actually get to their properties?
When, a couple of years ago, we looked at the special events for a permit for Waverly, and one of the things that came up repeatedly was the possibility of First Street being shut down because of Coleman Park. So in anticipation of those special events, we went ahead and acquired all of the street signage to detour traffic on 4th and 5th Avenue. So the city already has the signage for that, and so I would expect that the city would be making that installation and working with it, not the firefighters. We would be, Public Services would be in charge of establishing it and that, setting it up and taking it down or making arrangements for that. And it's not just the Firemen's Convention, there's also other planned community events that may be requesting First Street be closed down for a day or 2 days at a time.
I'm assuming that the people who live on First Street will be notified of this, because a number of people, First Street is the only way they can have access to their residences, so.
Right, so there, you have a hard closure typically the hard closure would be between 1st and 3rd Avenue, maybe 4th Avenue. But local residents, they have the alleys that they can utilize or the side streets from 2nd Street. So there, again, there's the hard closure, the soft closure with the detour route for, think of the Nestle trucks. We won't put them onto 5th Avenue and 4th Street. We would prohibit parking in certain locations so that the trucks can make the turns and the vehicles would be able to, with some reasonable accommodations, be able to make that work.
But there are some people that live on First Street, and I'm probably just being a little dense here, but forgive me, but there are some people that live on First Street right along the river. The only way that they can get to their house is by First Street.
Yes, they'll be able to, like at the north end of Coleman Park, they'll be able to get in.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
I got some feedback from someone who, or questions, I guess, and input. And it might sound a little bit crazy because of all the construction that's going on, but I was sympathetic to it. And that is, apparently there's a small group of retailers, maybe 4 or 5 of them downtown, that have already started to plan decor and stuff, thinking that the competition would be downtown again. And they wanted, to have that confirmed, and if that isn't the case, then they wanted to express how important it is to them to hold this event on Bremer Avenue. I don't know if you've heard from them, or, they're worried, obviously they're worried in general about their businesses with the construction. They think this would be a great celebratory event, and they probably wouldn't support, they say, the road being closed again or a delayed opening because of the Firefighters event. So I don't know if anybody's talked about that. I haven't heard anything, but just know that there are people who would like to use this as a celebratory occasion downtown, and maybe even as a celebration of the end of Phase 2 of construction.
We would love to host it downtown, but we have to have a guarantee that everything will be ready and everything will be done.
That's where the issue
And
really lies. I don't
that's
know
the
that we'll be
issue.
done. It's
And-
going to be so close, I don't think you can depend on that and then last second move it. When you sit in the meetings, they're saying they're going to be close, but we talked to Mike about some of the timing and some of the efforts they've made. I just don't know how it's going to happen. And have the entire thing paved, ready to have traffic on it again. I don't know.
Roadway is one issue, but then sidewalks and
Sidewalks.
bricks back,
Yep.
you're gonna have a lot of foot traffic there, so.
So if it's done, they can try and maybe route them back through there, but I think
Yeah,
it's
if
going to be
there's
very
something maybe we
difficult.
could give some thought to. If it's, and relatively close, maybe there's some things we could do to encourage, more
I know one
traffic
of the
downtown, foot traffic.
Things that Rob did last year was they have participants can bring in receipts from local businesses, throw it into a drawing to win door prizes. I think you're planning on doing that type of thing. So I think they've put some effort into trying to encourage folks to patronize businesses that
Well, the more important issue, yeah.
beverages and food to go into other establishments also.
The report that I got after the convention last time was that the merchants fared well. And so they were looking forward to convention coming again. And
Yeah, when we held the merchant meeting for the convention, they were very supportive of it coming downtown, and we would love to showcase our downtown. It's that guarantee that we can't quite get, so.
It's only 4 weeks, and it looks like a lot of work to get knocked out in 4 weeks. It's quite a bit yet.
Dennis, you mentioned an item that I don't know if the council needs to act on tonight. You were looking for a contribution of about $5,000?
Correct.
Is that,
It's not an agenda item, sir. I don't think we can act on
not on the
that.
agenda, so. Okay, very good. Just so we don't lose it in an upcoming agenda.
I have one more question, if that's all
Yes.
right. Just about will there be any more hard surfacing than there was the last time? In any areas that people will not be happy about?
You're going to have to be more specific, Edie.
Well, there was that prairie grass, and then there was some kind of harder surface, I think, that was put over that, and then there was, burning, and I don't know what all, but.
You bet.
So I guess, will there be anything worse than that this time? Let me put it that way, so that we can assure the neighbors and the people who live around there that their area around them will be back to normal?
You bet. No, it's all staying native. We do put wood chips down in the high-traffic areas. Ironically, you bring the neighbors up, the neighborhood has elected to or volunteered to come in and pick up all our trash and our cans.
Wow.
And so the Prairie Park neighborhood and some of the adjoining members or neighborhoods are going to come into the convention site, pick up the cans, and then they keep the money for the cans, and they have plans for that to improve some things up there. And so I think we got a pretty good buy-in
Okay.
With the
And
neighborhood.
but there was that sort of semi-hard surface that was put over something, right?
Yes,
And
that
we're
was
not-
wood chips.
We're not,
Yep.
oh, no, it was something more than wood chips.
Was a lime or something you put down at the
Yeah.
event tent?
There was a lime at the event tent. The driveways were either grass or wood chips, and the rock surfacing at the entrance.
Right, but we're not putting any more of that lime
No, the lime
down
stays where it is.
Okay.
Yep.
And there's commitment to remove that and restore the prairie at
Correct.
next spring.
Like some of the feedback I've received is that some of the campers requested the same campsites as they had last year because the neighbors were bringing them cookies and fresh rolls and all of those things, so.
Waverly spoiled them well. They were very happy.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Denny?
Any, with the evening activities, any plans for fireworks or anything?
There will not be any fireworks. There will be our lighted parade on Saturday night. And that'll start about 6? 6:30. About 6:30. So.
Okay, very good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda, approving the golf cart usage and route for the 2018 Iowa Firefighters Convention. And there was a map accompanied that, and I believe it pretty well spells out their requirements and what they can do and what they can't do. And Rob, you have something to?
Oh, just here in case there was questions.
Okay.
Again, just for clarification, part of the check-in process when participants come in to register, get their campsite, that type of thing, is if they do have a golf cart, we inspect them to make sure they've got personal insurance coverage on it, to make sure it's got the slow-moving emblem, those type of things. So, we make sure they're ready to be roadworthy, I guess, if they come off the convention grounds.
So these folks who have golf carts are bringing their own golf carts?
It's the preferred mode of transportation instead of taking vehicles out, that type of thing for a lot of people.
I think their route looks okay as long as they don't throw beer cans on Rod Drunko's front yard.
I'll just get the neighbors from out in
Prairie.
yeah, have them come out and pick them up.
He may be our first house of whatever we're trying to guard against if he's got beer cans out front.
The nuisance, became a nuisance
Yeah,
house.
disorderly house.
It does make me want to review the drunk driving golf cart ordinance.
I would move approving golf cart usage and route for the 2018 Iowa Firefighters Convention.
Second?
I do think that stretch along First Avenue, kind of between, what is that, 11th and 7th, kind of where we're diverting the traffic from Bremer Avenue due to construction, that may be a little more exciting than we like, but I also don't have any better suggestions, so.
I think we still need a second.
Need a second? No.
Let someone second it.
Tim made the motion.
Yeah, I got
Need a second.
Oh, second.
I thought Rod.
I thought Rod.
I hadn't, no.
Oh, okay, I thought someone had.
We now have a motion
Thank
and
you,
a second.
Brian.
Okay, you betcha.
I just have a question. The route over the Nestle Bridge, was that the route last time? Is there any wear and tear on the bridge from that? No?
No.
Golf carts don't wear down.
Yeah, golf carts up there, yeah, the golf carts.
And some of those are,
They don't tear up the golf course, they're not gonna tear up the bridge deck.
Okay.
some of those are not your traditional golf cart, but they get along fine, so. Motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say yes.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, approving registration detour route with the closure of First Street Southwest for the 2018 Firefighters Convention. Entertain a motion. And again, there was a map accompanying what they would like to close. It's the same as the last time.
I will approve the registration detour route with the closure of First Street Southwest for the 2018 Firefighters Convention.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
Here again, I just want to make sure that everyone has access to their properties through the alleyways, so we're not closing the street and not allowing people to get to their houses.
Yep, everybody on that First Street from Fifth Avenue up is contacted, and they have full access to it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And how long will it be closed?
In 16, we closed it Tuesday, Wednesday, and part of Thursday, because that's the influx of when our campers come to town. Right now, we kind of anticipate Tuesday and Wednesday, and depending on how many we still have on Thursday to get in, it just makes it easier to get those campers registered and get them on out to the campground.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 4 is approving the proposed competition site for the 2018 Firefighters Convention. Again, there was a map, and Mr. Oppel explained it quite well as to what they were going to do.
Could I ask a question? Do you have a competition practice site selected this year for people to practice?
No. Why were they? I guess I'm not.
Yeah, last year there was some practicing on Brown Avenue, or Brown Lane.
Brown Lane, that's a separate competition, and that is the co-ed and old timers, and those are going to be held down on
First Street?
On Fifth Avenue and by the fairgrounds.
Okay, great.
And that was our discussion earlier about that, Tab.
Entertain a motion.
I will move approval of the proposed competition site for the 2018 Iowa Firefighters Convention.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item, approving the purchase of a 2018 John Deere Pro Gator 2020A from Van Wall Equipment of Rock Island, Illinois.
Your Honor, I think Rob has something to add.
Mayor,
I'm sorry.
I was encouraged to have everybody follow us on our website, which is www.waverlyfireconvention.com. Or for those of you that frequent Facebook page, we do have our fire department page that we keep up to date with all the recent information.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
I apologize that I didn't catch you. Thank you.
That's fine.
That, and if folks, I'm assuming you still need a few volunteers to help out in some of the different events?
Yeah, if people are still interested in volunteering, they can contact any one of the members, or they can follow us on Facebook, and we'll get a message back to them one way or another that way.
You'd have a good time. I guarantee it. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Now we'll go to item number 5, approving the purchase of a 2018 John Deere Pro Gator 2020A from Van Wall Equipment of Rock Island, Illinois for the Leisure Services Cemetery Division, or approving the purchase of a 2018 Jacobson XD Truckster from Turfworks of Johnston, Iowa for the Leisure Services Cemetery Division. Entertain a motion.
Do we need to discuss which of the two options we're going to go with before we have our motion? There are two different,
Just move the gator and we can just keep on going here.
Yeah, but I mean, I would be in favor of doing that, but I do have just a legal question, I guess. Isn't there some code that says we have to take the lowest bid?
Not necessarily on equipment, but
Oh, okay.
construction or things of that nature, I believe you do.
For what?
Like construction,
Uh-huh.
things of that public bid
But
like
not
that.
for equipment?
I don't believe so. And Tab has some reasoning why the other one may not qualify, but since it was lower, he wanted to add the option But when we looked at some of the items that'll run through, whether it be attachments, whether it be truly 100% following the RFP, it may not qualify. So again,
Okay.
apologize for the
I
confusion.
mean, the rationale makes all kinds of sense. I just didn't want to vote on something and then find out that we're going against Iowa code or something, you know?
If you would allow it, sir, if we could just explain first before
Sure,
the motion is
okay,
made.
that's fine.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, it's not often I come with not the low bid and over budget item and ask you for approval of that. And we do have some information we want to share. I have Paul Chevelle here, who's the public grounds superintendent, that if there's any technical questions, he'll help me out. Right? We did do a competitive bid, and we received 3 bids back. One was obviously not up to specifications. The other one has some issues regarding its specification. It doesn't have as much of a doesn't hold as much, the capacity isn't as much, it doesn't have a front bumper. We have one in the system, so that's the reason why we decided we better at least offer that as an alternative, because if you don't go with the Gator, we need to have something to work. Basically, the John Deere has a heavier payload. We have equipment that can transfer between, because we already have 2 in the system, and we don't have any equipment for Jacobson right now. We have a water tank, a sprayer, a top dresser. Currently, it comes with a 2% parts discount. So in the future, if we need parts or service, we can get 2% off of the purchase price. So we get that credit as well.
When you say it, you're referring to the Deere. Thank you.
I'm referring to the Deere. The Deere already has a front bumper, and that's about a $150 item on the Jacobson that the Jacobson didn't include. So really, there's only about maybe $150, $200 difference between the cost of the Jacobson and everything that's on the Gator. So we're hoping that you approve the Gator.
Tab, do you have a preference for one of these 2 items?
I'm recommending the Gator.
Because of its versatility with the attachments we already have.
And really, the cost isn't that much difference once you take into account the credit and the bumper and those types of things.
So then why wouldn't we have a motion that simply proposes purchasing that one?
Because if you didn't want to take the high bid, and especially since it's over budget, and both of them are over budget, then we want to make sure you have that option.
The additional funding, when he says over budget, I want to clarify, there was funding from the other purchase that was under budget. So we are not, in theory, over budget on the 2 items, either one. It is simply on this one, not the other that you already approved in consent agenda. That was far enough under budget. We're still fine from an overall budgetary standpoint.
Yeah, the mower was about $5,500 under budget, so we're good on this one.
And again, it's okay if we vote to approve not the lowest bid.
In theory, you could disqualify the other one for not being 100% compliant with the RFP. You just want to
Okay.
provide the option financially for that to be looked at.
Okay.
I would like to move approval of the purchase of a 2018 John Deere Pro Gator 2020A from Van Wall Equipment of Rock Island, Illinois for $24,300, including trade-in for the Leisure Services Cemetery Division.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Seeing how it is at John Deere, we didn't have any dealerships more local that wanted to bid or were offered?
This is turf equipment, and you have to go through the turf equipment distributors. We can get parts, those types of things through the local, but in order to buy the unit, it has to go through the ones that are, it's like Fords and Chevys, you know.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion to purchase the John Deere Gator, say yes.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, Resolution 18116, a resolution approving a proposal from the Silverstone Group to perform actuarial and consulting services for the city of Waverly. Entertain a motion, please.
I'll move.
Go ahead.
Flip you for it.
No, you go. You go.
I'll move Resolution 18-116, a resolution approving a proposal from the Silverstone Group to perform actuarial and consulting services for the city of Waverly for the maximum amount of $2,150.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Council discussion?
It's such a small amount, I almost hate to bring this up, but when I'm looking at the contract, it's talking about maintaining several employee benefit plans, for which actuarial services apparently are necessary. What employee benefit plans does the city have under general management for which actuarial services are necessary?
If you look at it, it's discussing GASB 75, and when that came out, you're looking at post-employment benefits, so any retirement benefit or any possible retirement benefit is what they're looking at.
Okay.
So when we grant any kind of an exception, whether it be COBRA, things of that nature, they have to factor that into our audit on a balance sheet side, I believe it is, to show it, even though it's not part of our cash position.
Okay, that
So
makes
it's
sense.
just part of
'cause it's such a
GASB
small
for
amount, I knew it couldn't
post-employment
be a
benefits.
Full actuarial study, so.
The key is post-employment.
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome.
And what do we know about Silverstone and why did we choose them?
I'll let Jennifer speak to that.
They did our last report,
And we were happy with it.
and they did, they were very good.
Okay.
And
There's only a
it's
certain number
very
that really,
reasonable.
really jump and do this citywide, and throughout the state, they've been one of the better ones that have done it. They're well-known throughout this process.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor say yes?
Yes. Just roll call vote?
Oh, I'm sorry. Roll call vote.
Scherer.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Bergen.
Yes.
Drinkow.
Yes.
Angus.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Rafi.
Yes.
Motion carried. Next item, Resolution 18-117, a resolution approving the Iowa Department of Transportation Traffic Safety Improvements Program application for fiscal year 2020 funding for the reconstruction of 4th Street Southwest from near 3rd Avenue Southwest to near 8th Street Southwest. Entertain a motion.
I'll move Resolution 18-117, a resolution approving the Iowa Department of Transportation Traffic Safety Improvements Program application for fiscal year 2020 funding of the reconstruction of 4th Street Southwest from near 3rd Avenue Southwest to near 8th Street Southwest. The maximum eligible amount for the proposed site-specific project is $300,000.
Second.
Motion made, second. Council discussion.
Okay, this is just to approve the grant application, is that correct?
That's correct.
If we receive the grant application, and I'm looking at your, both the source of funds and the timeline here, they would be looking at doing design work, getting a contract to do design work next March. That seems like a fairly aggressive schedule, given all the money we've been spending on road projects lately. Are we going to have enough money available if everything happens the way that it's listed here to go ahead with construction in 2020?
Well,
Great question, Rod.
I guess I'm asking the city administrator that question.
We have a number of projects lined up for next year as well. The engineering of this is factored into part of that, but as far as the actual construction,
Fiscal year 2021.
Right.
Be
So
still a
would
few
we have
years
to, would we have to delay some other I mean, this is clearly a high priority project. I mean, 4th Street Southwest is in bad shape, very bad shape, and really needs to be done. But we also have 2 or 3 other projects that we've been putting off for years and years and years that we said, well, let's get these things done. And are we going to have to make a decision next spring to say, what of these other projects are we going to have to hold off for another year or 2 so we can get 4th Street done?
probably be the spring after that, because when you're
You're
looking
saying
at.
21, Rod.
Yeah, it'd probably be fiscal 21. So when you're building fiscal 20 this fall for next year, that's when we'd be looking at the second payment on Bremer Avenue, possibly Cedar Lane. Some of the other ones that we're looking at, the second portion of 20th Street Northwest. Then when you get to 2021, this is what we've had slated, the third payment for Bremer Avenue, and then possibly Public Works.
Right.
We've got them layered out, so it should work.
Okay.
Yes, that layering of the projects, like think of the 3 to 5 year capital improvement plan, this has always been the 2020 project in that. Now, you want to come in and displace it and reprioritize, that's certainly your prerogative to do that. But as you stated, this is a roadway that's in rough shape today, and it carries a tremendous amount of traffic. It's a major corridor arterial coming into the community, and it's a project that's already kind of been pushed back, and it's been pushed back due to the DOT advancing Bremer Avenue. So we couldn't have both corridors shut down at the same time due to construction. So this has already been kicked out a couple of years.
I understand we'll look at this next spring when we have all of this ready to go and we can say, do we have enough room to be able to do it? So I know that, my concern is just to make sure that when we take a look at this next spring, that we're actually going to have enough wiggle room to be able to get this project in, because we're going to end up having to fund almost all of it ourselves, it looks like.
And we're probably going to fund the engineering side of it, and that's where you see on the schedule here, March 2019, entering into an engineering agreement to do the design work so it can be bid in January or February 2020, which then allows work to begin in June or July of 2020. So that timeline allows us to go through the budgeting process, approve the budget. We talk about the first Monday in May having the public hearing on the budget, turn around and in the regular agenda item to then approve the engineering agreement so that this design work can begin immediately so that we can continue to meet this timeline.
It works on paper right now.
All right,
That's about all
but
we
it
can
looks
tell you.
aggressive. I'm glad we're going ahead with it. I'm not opposed to it in any way, but it just seems kind of like an aggressive timing.
It is, but as we stated, it's probably necessary to get the timing done because it does take a long time to engineer something like this.
This is probably one stretch of city street that I get a lot of questions. When are you going to finish the 3-lane?
All the time.
Given the feedback we had on Bremer, it always surprises me that they're willing to have 3-lane on the highest volume stretch of road in town, but they hesitant to do it on Bremer Avenue.
Okay, any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Bergen.
Yes.
Drinkow.
Yes.
Angus.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Rafi.
Yes.
Chair.
Yes.
Motion carried. Item number 8, Resolution 18-118, a resolution awarding contract for the citywide sidewalk and pedestrian ramp repairs 2018 project to Lodge Construction of Clarksville, Iowa. Entertain the motion.
I'll move approval of Resolution 18-118, resolution awarding contract for the citywide sidewalk and pedestrian ramp repairs 2018 project to Lodge Construction of Clarksville, Iowa for the bid amount of $55,310.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Council discussion.
I'm in favor of staff's suggestion, I guess, of not supporting this, is how I was reading this, and combining the two phases and getting a better bid later and delaying this.
Yeah, I was of the impression that our sidewalk project was kind of on hold for this year until after our strategic planning, so we could kind of come up with some visioning of what we thought the sidewalk project should accomplish.
Well, I know at the time we talked about it was the infill project we were talking about not doing, and not
Right.
putting in sidewalks where they may not be needed, neighborhoods that didn't have them, or chunks that, but this is the repair that's been ongoing. And the issue we run into here, and I've talked to Mike about this quite a bit, is while the estimate, it's well above the estimate, the amount of work we're looking at overall, though, compared to this time 7 years ago when this section was done again, it's less than half, is it not, Mike? Total dollar amount a year?
Yeah, so in previous years, between the ped ramp work and the sidewalk work, we were running want to say around over $200,000 in construction work, and now we're down to 40,000. So, I mean, that's the good news, is that the volume of work that needs to be done is very, very low. The challenge is, we notified 18 contractors, only 3 picked up plans, and only 1 submitted a bid. So we bid it same time of year, but, you know, it's just so little quantity to attract much interest. So one of the things that we're looking at going forward to try to help things out would be to jump on this sooner and try to get the bid out, or get the plan documents out in June. That might be our best opportunity to try to get a little more interest.
What about combining it with that other work that you had described in the materials?
Combining
District
districts.
Yeah.
It still leaves a little bit, okay, so you double the amount of work, but it's scattered out over twice the area now. So we've had this discussion internally with staff. There's no guarantees that we're going to get better bids in doing that, so.
The other downside of that is we have so many things that are targeted. This year, we do the sidewalks, and next year we do the seal coating, then we do the manhole rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Start combining, we throw that out of sync, and then we're really pushing some of these out, and we have a really solid system going. We just need to bid estimate better next time. You know, with the quantity as low as it is, we're paying a little bit higher premium for that quantity. And that made sense once we thought about it, but we didn't realize it'd be this much lower. You're talking a fourth of what we had been doing. The interest just wasn't there this time of year. So we are paying more per unit, but there's a whole lot less units to do. So while it is over our estimate, we didn't account for the estimate being that low based on the demand for this time of year. So it's really an estimation issue versus necessarily the cost issue.
So what's your recommendation? Did I read something wrong? I thought you were recommending that we not do this.
We were looking at that possibility, and then we started looking at the other items that we have in cycle in order. And to throw a wrench into that, it might be better, at least this year, to accept this if council would be willing to. And let us try to fix it next year with either better estimates or better quantity, or resetting the cycle of how we're doing seal coating and the manholes and all the rehabilitation after. Because we're in a rotation now that's been going on for 7 years or so.
It's not just the sidewalk program that's in this 7-district rotation. Our seal coating, our manhole rehab, everything follows it within a certain pattern. So seal coating is always a year behind the sidewalk work. If we don't want to be doing the sidewalk work the same year as the seal coating, because then you start tearing up the seal coating, or the contractors start kind of getting in each other's way. So we do have kind of a system mapped out, and we like the system. We would like to, I guess, go with this and try to make some adjustments next spring to hopefully make it more appealing to the contractors.
The amount that is going to be assessed to the property owners, is that going to be based on the bid that was received? In other words, are they going to be paying 40% more than they would otherwise?
No. When we do the council earlier this year set the maximum unit price that could be assessed.
Right.
Now, in
We were
past
very aggressive
years,
in doing that, weren't we?
in past years, the unit bids have always come in a little bit lower, typically. This year, they've come in higher. So,
So that difference will be made up by the city, basically?
yes.
Okay. I think there's some real validity in maintaining that.
Cycle.
That cycle, thank you. Even though it's a larger amount, and I understand that, but I think it's probably a good idea to go ahead with this and take a look before we did the bids next year and see if we could figure out what the problem was and do a little bit better job of getting more bids in. But I think we should go ahead with this cycle at this point.
What did we budget for this?
I believe we had, let's say, 40.
Well, that was our estimate.
Our estimate, yes.
Yeah.
But the estimate affected our budgeting process, correct? Or not?
Well, this is in its own fund, And it's one that we've been struggling how we're going to fund it going forward. And this is something that we will talk about during budget a lot heavier this year as we continue to progress. Having a lot less dollars involved will help some, but again, we're still struggling with how to fund this going forward, this project. So with strategic planning, this may be coming up as well. This will be one of the challenges we'll have come budget time is how do we continue forward with this project?
I guess that was kind of the question I had, was considering this is the second time through this district, 7 years after I went through it. What are we seeing areas of deterioration? It certainly shouldn't be the ped ramps, the things that the city was responsible for originally.
So about half the dollar amount is doing some ped ramp work. The first time through, if the ped ramp had a ramp, but no detectable warning, we skipped over it. So now, this time we're going in and those ramps that were skipped over the first time, we're now adding the detectable warning. Additionally, sidewalks deteriorate over time. Trees heave and lift sidewalks over time. So we will always need to be inspecting and maintaining sidewalks. It's just going to happen. So again, the good news is that the volume's pretty low.
I guess I had the assumption that all the ped ramps, anything that touched the street was taken care of last time. So that's why I was wondering why it would make a big difference if we kept it on the same cycle with the seal coating, that type of thing. But if we're disturbing the street to put in new ped ramps or better ped ramps that are current standards, I can understand why you'd want to stay on the same cycle.
And even some of the equipments, when they bring in concrete or when they do the work, they're getting into the new seal coating, it'll tear it up. And so at least this way, if sidewalk's done first, and you just have regular traffic, not the heavier traffic, but it was not our intent to bring something in like this. We didn't anticipate this. Again, I'm glad the quantity is down so much. You're talking a fourth, but we just need to make some adjustments, as Mike said, and kind of maybe talk to some contractors. Is there a better time of year? Is there something more appealing? How do we move forward with it? And depending on what we decide in the budget, how to fund this, it may be a shift in how we do this. Maybe it is 2 districts. The other piece of it that we look at, and I guess we haven't brought up, is regardless of how much work there is to be done, staff still has to go through the entire neighborhood and all the sidewalks. That amount is a sunk cost. It does not change. Staff having to go through. So if we do 2 sections, we have twice that cost as we normally would. We may save some money on the second time around, but it may not be as substantial as we thought. So all in all, we kind of rehashed it out and decided maybe let's just try and get it done this year for what we have. We'll look at the funding for it. And then in the coming years, we have to make a better decision, knowing what we know now, to possibly look at doing another district or adding other districts, or maybe there's other concrete work that can be factored in this too. But it was quite a long discussion, longer than I wanted to have on sidewalks like this. But we just don't like bringing this stuff to council to have to deliberate over this either. We'd like to be nice and smooth and accurate, and we just off a little bit in the estimate, so.
But if we're going to have to, it's sounding like we're going to have to revisit it regardless. I mean, if we already are asking major questions about funding it in the future, so why would we then go ahead now? I mean, if it looks like we're going to be making adaptations because of financing, why would we be so focused on keeping the routine now for one last time, or?
Well, we're hoping it
More
won't be
time, or-
one last time. We'd like to continue going forward, and it'll really just determine what the adjustments are. Is it truly timing of year and we stay cycle by cycle, or do we have to start to combine districts? I think we're okay either way. We just wanted to continue on making that progress and not letting another year go by in some of these areas and then having to double up to catch up. I guess we'd like to do this and then have the choice if we double up the next time versus being forced to do it this next time. In order to stay in that cycle. And again, it's just because it works as smooth as it does that we'd like to stay in it. If we were having other issues with it, we'd certainly kind of start over, so to speak, or relook at it. But it has been very successful. I know Public Works, when everybody comes in for the season, they know exactly what they're doing in each district before we even talk about it. They know the cycle as well, and they're already gearing up for it. And so it's just kind of been, I guess, habit adjustments, that kind of thing, to just keep moving with it until we can find a way to make the adjustments we're going to need to be. So I certainly understand what you're saying, and I'm fine either way with council. that was just our pitch, is to keep going forward, make the progress done.
So there are 7 districts.
Correct.
And what are are there 7 maintenance things going on? Like for every single year, there's something going on in that district?
Yeah, example would be,
there's
where obviously the sidewalk work,
right.
the seal coating, hydrant painting,
Okay.
sewer line inspection, televising cleaning, manhole rehab is another one. I think to some degree, they're kind of doing it with tree trimming and those types of things. So it does work very, very well to have the 7 districts. It's really, doing the sidewalk work really kind of opened our eyes to some of the tremendous benefits. and
I suppose,
staggering
I just want to make sure that, there are 7 things in cycle. It's not like there's an off year or something where we could, delay this a year and let that bump follow through or something. But if there are kind of 7 different projects in 7 different years.
Probably the most critical one is the seal coating.
Okay, having that done every 7 years.
Well, right, and
have it happen right after the sidewalk?
yeah, we'd rather have it, a year or 2 after, not a year ahead of the sidewalk work, because they come in with skid loaders and they tend to be spinning and twisting and turning on the pavement, and so, you have a newly seal coated street, you're thinking, well, why in the heck didn't they plan this work a year ahead of the seal coating rather than the year after or the year of?
Yeah, I think the adjustments need to be made not so much on the cycle that we're on, but on how we engage in the bidding process next year. And take a look and talk to some contractors and say, how can we get more interest in bidding this? Can we combine some projects, or what can we do to get better bids? I don't think it's a question of trying to make the adjustment by changing our maintenance cycle.
Okay. Any other discussion, questions? Roll call vote, please.
Bergen.
Yes.
Drinkow.
Yes.
Angus.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Rafi.
Yes.
Scher.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Motion carried. 7-0. Resolution 18-120, a resolution approving the Iowa Department of Transportation Traffic Safety Improvements Program application for fiscal year 2020, funding for safety improvements at the intersection of Iowa Highway 3 and 10th Avenue Southwest. I'd entertain a motion, please.
I'd move Resolution 18-120, resolution approving the Iowa Department of Transportation Traffic Safety Improvements Program application for fiscal year 2020, funding for safety improvements at the intersection of Iowa Highway 3 and 10th Avenue Southwest. The maximum eligible amount for the proposed site-specific project is $200,000.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Staff input?
This kind of came to us on the side a little bit. That's why we didn't have as much information prepared. It was kind of, came from a discussion I had with Councilman Drinkel, actually, about some of the speed and the concern, the issues down by the CUNA. When I contacted the DOT, they said at the time there was not any necessary projects that were going to be happening. And then months later, it's like, oh, by the way, we are thinking about doing a safety project there, possibly with lights or advanced warning signals or something along that line. And so with the August 15 deadline approaching, we quickly wanted to get this in front of you to be considered so that it could be looked at as another chance to have funding to hopefully fix that section or make it a little safer as you come through that area. I think I've had a lot of comments from the public and employees, et cetera, that does get a little bit hairy at time. There are a number of crashes that have occurred out there, some of them fairly severe because of the speed. They did send us a very large sheet of what that looks like. And so again, we just quickly wanted to put this before you with the explanation of it's just an application to see if they could get some additional traffic lights, advanced warning signals. They're still working through what that may look like if the funding comes, but this came straight from the DOT asking us to apply.
Yeah, I would highly encourage us to consider this. There have been some very serious crashes there, and most of the time they end up on Kenny Mitchell property. So. But I know that there were some improvements made 2 years ago that have drastically decreased the number of accidents that are happening there. So it does support some additional signage, that type of thing out there to reduce it even farther.
But then you have the increase to 55 miles per hour right at the intersection. Yeah.
My concern was with the increased traffic that might occur because of this Cedar River Parkway. And people trying to turn across traffic to enter or exit the parkway. And before the parkway is completed, I think is a good time to be thinking about what impact that might have. So, yeah, I fully support this also.
I'm thrilled to see this service.
Rumble strips, that type of thing.
A friend of my niece's was severely injured 8-9 years ago out there, and I pushed for them to do anything, and we were kind of told at the time there weren't enough severe accidents out there to do anything, so.
Well, I know that.
Very happy to see this on.
I know that CUNA, in conversations with Sharina, they have some real concerns. Concerns now, but they're also anticipating what's going to happen. They're trying to anticipate what's going to happen when the parkway opens, so.
Well, and I would read it as an encouraging sign that they kind of invited us to apply for this, right? So, yeah.
Yep.
I would say on the resolution itself, the third whereas should be struck. I know Brian had pointed out to me as well as he proofreading, it should not be a Fifth Avenue Southwest intersection traffic signal. I don't think it's going to help that area that much if we put one at Fifth Street Southwest. So if we can strike that out of there, that would be preferential. That was a leftover from the prior
I'll take that
piece
as
of
a
application. Appreciate that if you would, so.
Okay, any other discussion?
I still like a signal at Fifth Avenue.
It was in the other one, so I still think it's coming, just not with this one.
Roll call vote, please.
Drinkow.
Yes.
Angus.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Rafi.
Yes.
Scherer.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Bergen.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Third and final reading of ordinance 1049, an ordinance adding section 104.4.14, keeping disorderly house to chapter 104 public offenses and providing for an amendment to section 23.05 applicable chapters of the municipal infractions chapter of the Waverly Municipal Code. Entertain a motion.
I will move approval of third and final reading of ordinance 1049 as read by the mayor.
Second.
Motion made and second. Council discussion.
Well, I think you've all seen my revised version. I promised that I would put something together that I thought was more straightforward and with less ambiguity. You've got it in your packet. If you have any question, we can do that. I would like to move that the revised version be substituted for the original version of the ordinance.
I would second that.
Okay.
If you have any questions, I'd be happy to discuss them, but I guess such things as somebody asked at the last meeting what particular issues I had. One, for example, was having loud or disagreeable noises. And well, my lawnmower is loud and it's certainly disagreeable, but I don't think this resolution ordinance was intended to prevent people from mowing their lawn. But perhaps if they were mowing their lawn at a time that was inappropriate, it would be. So, some of that language I tightened up a little bit, and I don't know if this is in the correct format. I submit that to Bill's judgment, but I felt that this was perhaps a little bit clearer, and I would feel comfortable going forward with this.
I appreciate you doing the work on it. I think I would like to hear from Bill, too, to see whether, being more specific, if in fact that's what it is. I mean, to me, disagreeable and inappropriate are both subjective, so, but, it is, I see where you're headed with this, but I do want to make sure we're not, sometimes ambiguity is better. So I guess I'm not taking a position one way or the other. I would just like to hear from Bill, I guess, whether he sees anything here, given that could tie our hands in ways that we wouldn't want them tied, given that the original document came from, or the original language came from, I think, a city that had been using it for quite some time.
So when I reviewed the changes, and I got those on the Monday, I'd already submitted my documents for the agenda packet, so I didn't have a chance to really consider that when we were making any changes. There's some different words that are substituted for words that probably mean fairly similar things to people when they're looking at this kind of a situation. Most of the ones I looked at use the words quarreling, fighting, disorderly conduct, and I really would miss having disorderly conduct as a defined violation of this particular ordinance, because disorderly conduct has been defined over the years pretty well by, officers know what it is, judges know what it is, it's easier to apply. You look at loud and raucous, I know nobody uses raucous in their normal discussion. Boisterous is really, if you look at the different definitions of that, it's almost like you're excited and you're celebrating 4th of July, or and so we're disagreeable, unruly. They're all kind of the same words. I don't think it would change how Rich and the guys and the gals would enforce the ordinance, whatever the words are. Otherwise, it's kind of using the same words, maybe in different orders on that first paragraph. So it's probably okay, except that I really like the idea that we're using language that's used in a lot of other communities, and especially the one that uses it the most, and that's Iowa City. They've used it in court, they've used it with defendants, and they haven't made, or if they've made changes, this is the result of 7 years of use of this particular ordinance. So that, I'm usually not wanting to reinvent things when I do things for a community like ours, because we don't spend enough time enforcing it and doing it. We want to rely on those that use it more than we do. When I get to the third one, I don't think that works for me, because the first two are actually simple misdemeanors. The first one is a simple misdemeanor, so it's defined as a crime. And that has to be a separate subsection that you define what the crime is. The second one is, first of all, the authority for the officers to act in a certain manner, and that anybody who refuses to submit to that authority or to respond to that authority can be charged with a crime again, a simple misdemeanor. So those are two very specific things that they're doing in the first two subsections. The third subsection it can't really refer to what the crime is. It has to really refer to what the sanction is, or what the civil sanction is for the violation of that same thing. So that's why you repeat the same language, is because you're saying over here the same language is a crime, and over here the same language is a civil infraction. And that was designed really to go towards both the property owner and the tenant in a way that wouldn't be a criminal violation. And so they found that was more effective to use with property owners. I think sometimes with the tenants, they probably use the simple misdemeanor more often, because they're the ones engaging in the behavior, as opposed to the property owner who's just failing to make any effort to control what their tenants are doing. So I don't think I can live with the third, the way that's redone as far as the infraction. I mean, you could take it out, because if you didn't want to have a civil infraction, you could just do the two criminal charges on the 1 and 2. But I think that gives you a little bit more play with the landlords that you would tend to use it with. And really, again, this is how it's applied and how it's enforced by the department. They're going to be the front line. It's not going to very often get to me to actually file a civil infraction. That's going to be a pretty rare occurrence. But it is something that the landlords are alert about, because we have an entire chapter that can be subject to some infractions. And so they understand the concept of this is part of their landlord responsibility to have, to control as much as they can, and they can't always control it, and we're not going to just hold them accountable if they're exercising some control or trying. So I 3 I can't live with. 1, if you wordsmith it differently, it's probably saying the same things. It's probably not a problem. But again,
Except for disorderly conduct, if I heard you right.
Right, the disorderly conduct. And and again, inappropriate is probably the same as disagreeable. How does that make it criminal? I mean, you're going to describe that to the judge, and they're going to say, well, I don't think that's the kind of inappropriate or disagreeable that we're going to charge this person or convict this person of. So it really does come down to, you make the effort of saying, we charged it as this because we think it's a violation, but a judge still makes the decision as to whether or not that behavior as described is actually a violation of the criminal code. So, again, I didn't really have any choice. I mean, I guess I didn't feel like, the quarreling and fighting is one that's been commonly in disorderly household, or disorderly house ordinances over the years. So taking that out really just makes that fall back to disorderly conduct, probably, or assault, as opposed to using it as the disorderly house. Other than that, I probably would have spent more time trying to work it out too, and make different wordings to incorporate maybe some of the other words together with other words we had already. Because sometimes the more you use, the more somebody can jump on that word to help them with that definition.
One action we could take tonight was maybe table this till the next meeting to give you an opportunity to incorporate some of Ron's thoughts.
I don't know if that's necessary, because one of the purposes was to have this in place before a lot of these rental agreements started. And I don't have a problem with that. Frankly, I don't want to ride this horse to death. So I'm not going to be terribly upset if my version gets voted down, because my goal in all of this is not to pass this resolution. I still feel this resolution is not, other than maybe Section 2 dealing with police enforcement, I don't think this resolution is going to be particularly effective. My goal in all of this, and I will be working with the mayor and the city administrator on this, is to put together a task force or a temporary commission to be looking at ways that we can work in making neighborhoods that are affected by these kinds of noise and disorderly house issues, ways that we can work with the neighbors and the neighborhood in trying to resolve some of those issues. So that's really my goal, and that I'll press forward with as I have time here in the next couple of weeks. I'm not going to be disappointed or upset if my ordinance gets voted down and the other ordinance gets passed. So.
The only question I have is, and this is based on comments I've gotten from some landlords and folks, if I'm understanding the blue, the red, Ron's added in the bottom section, or any violation of this section by a property owner, tenant, or other person. That was one of the things they felt needed to be there. They were using examples where they've tried to work with the tenant. You shouldn't have these parties if you do, blah, 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 but there's always the life of the party that shows up. And no matter what the landlord and the tenant have tried to do, the life of the party is the one causing the issue. So they wanted somehow to be able to include that person in establishing blame.
So the problem with that is there's already ordinances for somebody who either provides alcohol to minors or is loud and obnoxious and violating disorderly conduct and those kind of things. This is about the house. This is about who owns the house or who rents the house. And the people in possession of that house are going to be a landlord or a tenant. They're not going to be the guy visiting. And so you really can't use it against the person visiting. It's really just the landlord or the person who's on the lease.
But you have other code that could apply to the person visiting.
For the person who's obnoxious. And sometimes sometimes the person who's the tenant wants that person out of there too. And that can be, or they can get them for trespassing if they don't leave. They can get them for different things that give them power to work with the people that are not living there.
Chief, you have some input too.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's a great example of it. Is that's what we would want. If there is an individual that shows up to a particular residence, the tenant calls us. And all those things can be used, the trespassing, whether it be bringing the alcohol, bringing the parties, having it outside, those things are in place. as Bill said, this is what happens when it's the individuals that own the home that continue to invite it. And what we have a problem with is they will host a gathering, and then a lot of times all we're able to do is capture the individuals that came to the party that are leaving. But the next weekend or the next year, it continues to be a revolving door with individuals. So that's the benefit to this. And then that answers the question too of the fairgrounds or other public space. It's about the house. It's not about an individual's activity somewhere else. So that's the answer to that question too that was brought up a couple weeks ago.
Like through education with Ron's meetings, that's an education piece that can be passed on. If you're the tenant, you're the landlord, and you've got the life of the party that always shows up and ruins it for you, you've got other ways to remedy that other than this.
Certainly call us and we'll remove that person. if that's the issue.
One point, though, is that this does not apply only to residences. I mean, there's no limitation to this being a residence. This could also apply to a commercial enterprise. Is that correct? Am I reading it? I don't see a limitation in it.
I don't believe it's limited, but I think that's the desire behind it. And so an example would be common practice, right? There was something when we did have a movie theater that was in operation. There was a lot of times that they'd have a new movie that would come out, very popular, and you'd have a Thursday night showing, a midnight showing, and there'd be lines of people outside, and we would get calls from people that were in the Big Six upset that there was loud, raucous noise, and we would have to explain to them that that's, they're zoned properly. It's within what that business typically does, and they would be upset by that. Well, one particular night, a resident called in, complained about a line of people outside, and we told them that that is part of the plan of living downtown. You have to take that into consideration, and they're within their right of running that business. Well, then K-Way showed up, and they parked their van there, and they started projecting the radio station. They called again, and then a lot of this comes down to officer discretion. The officer felt that that was beyond what was reasonable for that business to be doing at that particular night, and so they went into the Palace Theater with the previous owners and asked them to stop that. They became very upset. So that was one of those joyful nights that we upset two people. But we resolved it and felt we handled it properly. So a lot of it will come down to discretion. And
well, let me give you an example, though. A number of years ago, when Hardee's was still in town, we had, one summer, we had a tremendous amount of problems with large gatherings of young people in the parking lot in the back of Hardee's that would last until the wee hours of the night. And we were constantly calling the police to have them broken up. And Hardee's basically refused to acknowledge that they had any responsibility for that problem at all. Would this kind of resolution, this kind of ordinance?
so my question, I would have to get more information on whether or not Hardee's is inviting it and Hardee's is hosting it. If the business is actively participating in it and allowing it to happen, I would say they would have some responsibility in it. If they were just using their space and maybe Hardee's calls us, then I would say no. I wouldn't think that would be appropriate use for it.
Well, during regular business hours, but they weren't inviting these people to be there other than the fact that it was a public, parking lot on a public restaurant. But they weren't controlling the people that were using the parking lot.
And I think how I'm looking at this ordinance is those owners or people in control of the property that are taking active roles in allowing it to happen. And I think that's the way we're going to look at it. And if Hardee's is, or any other business or home is an active participant, and we go to them and say, help us, and they don't, this ordinance will be the result of already trying to work with them.
it's kind of the end of the road type situation, not certainly the first step by any means.
Well, I guess that brings up one final question I have is what is the enforcement procedure for this? Would the enforcement procedure be to call the police? Is there any private citizen complaint, citizen enforcement, or, filing a complaint with the court, or what?
Yeah,
what kind of
typically
enforcement
these
procedure would
start
there be?
with a citizen complaint, and that's where the officers respond. A lot of times, we don't see it initially, but a neighbor will call, whether it be a loud noise complaint, large gathering, somebody throwing beer cans or any other debris in somebody else's yard. The officers will respond, and how we're handling it today will be the initial step of how we'll handle it in the future, is that we'll ask that party to break up and we'll disperse them. And this is one of those situations is, what if it regenerates? We may disperse them again. Or does it happen the following weekend and the officers talk to them again? It's going to be the repeated one home on a regular basis that the officers are going to have to continue to go there. If the tenants won't take care of it, then the idea that I've talked to our sergeants about is that then they will try to work with Bill or the city and find out who the landlord is and address it with them. You have a problem. We've responded to this particular residence X number of times for these particular issues. You're going to have to do something. And the landlords I've talked to want to know that, because they want to make sure that they're good neighbors to everybody else, and we'll let them have the opportunity to do it. It's the ones that disregard our request for help, and it continues, is where I can see a landlord or a property owner being affected by this ordinance.
I'll have to add, though, that I think this is a particular ordinance that's designed for homes, designed for residences and private. It isn't really designed for a public parking lot. That would involve disturbing the peace if you're being too loud or making too much noise. And it's a different issue. And to me, this is really that personal home type of place, an apartment or a residence or a backyard or something. And that's probably the way we'll enforce it.
We already have an ordinance for disturbing the peace, correct?
Okay, any other discussion?
I suppose my thought is I appreciate Ron going through the process of trying to improve the language, but I also think there's some value in using standard language across other similar ordinances in other cities. I think that if this ever goes to court, and I'm not sure that it's designed that it's meant to go to court, but the idea of having the same sort of language of loud, raucous, disagreeable noises, as that's what the courts have seen before, not having to readjust the arguments for boisterous or, just a slightly modified word that just a different synonym somehow seems like you're making a whole lot of work for the prosecutor to move from standard language to something else. So I'm again, it's that kind of reinventing the wheel. I think we can trust those people who have used these ordinances more regularly that, this is the language that works. So.
Is the procedure for the council act on Rod's amended version?
Well, we've got a motion and a second.
We've had a motion and a second, so we
Right.
need to vote on my version.
We would need to vote on the amendment.
And then if that is voted down, then we vote on the ordinance's version.
And that can be a voice vote?
Yes, because he just changed the motion. He didn't change anything else.
Okay.
And then we would vote on the ordinance.
Okay.
But you have to vote on the motion first.
Okay. Have a motion second, and had discussion on an amended version of the disorderly house ordinance. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Motion defeated. 6-1. Now, any discussion on the proposed amendment, or the proposed ordinance?
I would move the third and final reading of ordinance 1049, an ordinance adding section 104.4.14, keep in disorderly house, to chapter 104, public offenses, and providing for an amendment to section 23.05.
We already moved
We already have a
that.
we already have a
That motion's
motion.
already on the floor.
The motion's already on the floor.
Sharon Rossi.
Sounds a lot like my motion.
Yeah.
I thought we had to go back
No.
and
Well, I didn't.
No.
insert that we were.
We defeated the
using
amendment, and now we get
Okay.
to discuss
My
the-
intent was to say we're going back to the original
Yes.
language of the amendment. and-
Simply now we can discuss the original amendment, or the original motion. But I
thought
I think we've talked it pretty well to death, so.
Let's call the question.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Angus,
Yes.
McKenzie,
Just for clarification, we're back to the original
Yes.
wording.
Correct.
We are.
That's right.
Yes.
Rafi,
Yes.
Scherer,
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Bergen.
Yes.
Drinkow.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Reports from boards and commissions. Historic Preservation Commission minutes from June 4th, 2018. Received into record. Economic Commission minutes, June 12th, 2018. Received to record. Senior calendar for August 2018. And a reminder that the Tuesday dinner is tomorrow. And at the Senior Center, I reserved last month, and it was a good meal, $10 well invested.
I did go to cribbage last month and enjoyed it.
Heard
but-
that. I heard you were there. I went to the board meeting. You were there. Yes, they were very impressed.
But I won't be able to make this month. I'll be moving my daughter to college, so.
Senior calendars received into record. Staff comments, any?
No, there are not.
Did you see the look he gave us?
Yes.
See the hour of the night?
That was not a question, was it?
8 minutes to go, and otherwise have to authorize extensions.
I'll turn into pumpkins here.
City council member comments.
Just to remind everybody, once again, that National Night Out is tomorrow night. It's a great time. Encourage everyone to show up.
Just to again emphasize the invitation from the fire department to come out to the campsite over Labor Day weekend. They're sincere in wanting to thank the community for the support that they provide year in and year out, as well as some of the inconveniences having 2,200 of your best friends in town can cause, so please come out.
Okay, any other council comments? Thank you all for your participation in the long meeting. The only other comment that I have is the 20th Street reconstruction. Got an update today that 20th Street itself won't be closed until August 13th. Fifth Avenue is closed today, and or tomorrow, whichever. And
All of this is subject to weather.
right. So, and then, yeah, that concludes. I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say yes.
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 Oh, we are adjourned.